Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 31st meeting of the Pembroke School Committee. We'll call it to order at 7:02. Just a reminder for those in attendance as well as watching at home, these meetings are recorded mainly for the purposes of our minutes. The videos are posted to our website, usually 24, 48 hours behind, after the meeting to conclusion, and then we also go live on PAC TV. We are back at North Pembroke Elementary School where we have been meeting in the past, but we moved to the high school for COVID and with the ability to record there and make sure we transmit it out to meetings to be done live. So with that, couple things. There are adjustments to the agenda. We will take up the consideration of drafting of the Hanover, what I'll call the Hanover letter, which was circulated, which Hanover is requesting back for local control for the decision on masking, which was taken away from us a week ago last Friday. So I'll ask for consideration of that, which I circulated yesterday, and that is the only adjustment to the agenda that I have. Okay, so communications, there is one here that I'll pass out, and it's to request to become a special municipal employee. You get to read that. It's part of our ability as school committee members, elected volunteers, that we can be special municipal employees, which covers a lot of things from indemnification out there. So I'll pass these out, you can read it, sign it, however, and we'll get it back to the select board's office.
What did that mean? What did you say? Indemnification of what, sir?
Special municipal employees?
Yes.
Yes, because we're volunteers for the community, elected volunteers. We are considered a municipal employee, and this allows us to be held in indemnification on certain issues.
On certain issues?
On
What issues, sir?
issues with regard that are where we would not be considered gross negligence. Okay? Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay, if there's, brings me to the next point. If there's anyone who'd like to speak on any of the agenda items, there is a sign-in sheet there. We do have a public comment period where we'll allow people to talk about particular items that are on the agenda. You just need to sign in. You give it up to 2 minutes to speak, and then we will obviously consider anybody who would like to speak. Okay? That's how we handled it for the last meeting. I'm guessing people are here based upon the DESI change that happened a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, we'll talk about it and what the decision got taken completely out of our hands after we made a certain decision. I recognize a couple of faces who were here.
Point of order.
So,
No decisions have been taken out of our hands.
sir?
Point of order.
I understand. Unfortunately,
No decisions have been taken out of our hands, so you guys work for us. Point of order.
Sir, first of all, you can't keep blurting out, there's no thing, point of order. I understand it is a public meeting, held in public.
It is within the what is it, Murphy?
It's Robert's Rules of Order,
Robert,
and
there you
actually,
go.
that only,
Point of order, sir, I can say it.
you can say it, but
Thank you
unfortunately.
very much.
Unfortunately.
Move on, sir.
No, sir, I do not move on, because first of all, that only applies to the people sitting at this table. We have, by our policy, a ability for public comment. When I used our, I will clarify that pronoun next time. I meant the school committee.
Oh, thank you, sir.
The school committee decision. So let me reiterate what.
So make sure you speak a little bit more clearly for the record.
Okay, we'll talk in a respectful manner. You weren't here at the last meeting. Thought we had a very respectful discussion last
I'm
meeting.
very respectful, sir. I suffer from Tourette's. I'm a retired combat veteran of 20 years, and I suffer from PTSD. So if you want to try to belittle me because
I'm
of
not.
the way I'm coming off to you, that ain't going to work.
Sir, first
You
of
can
all,
listen to the words coming out of my mouth, and then you can intelligently dissect those words and take meaning.
sir, I wasn't trying to belittle you. There was no intent there. I thank you for your service. I am sorry for your situation. However, I just ask you to be respectful. I will, anybody who has been in front of
My
this,
first time downtown.
anyone who was here at the last meeting, I think we had a very respectful discussion. A couple folks here were here. I appreciate that.
Folks did vote on they were on our side,
Thank you.
or the majority of the people.
Well, the 5 votes. So just to reiterate, the folks who weren't here or didn't see the recap, what happened. So on October 17th, the Pembroke School Committee took a, August 17th, sorry, took a vote which was in our control to, at that time, abide by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education guidelines, which made masks optional for all students within the Pembroke Public Schools. What happened 3 days later, I believe on the morning of the 20th, the Commonwealth made a decision by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, by the Commissioner of Education, Jeffrey Riley, supported by the governor, who made a comment a couple hours later, to make a mandate of masks in all schools for the first 30 days or till October 1st. And then at that point, local districts could then apply for a waiver if they reached 80% vaccination rates for 2 different age groups. The superintendent will go through that. So that's what has brought us to tonight. All we can do, and you'll hear what we can do, we obviously have to abide by the DESI guideline.
No, we do not, sir. No, we do not. If it is repugnant to the Constitution, it is repugnant in any other form. You people need to wake up. I'm not masking my kid.
Sir, that's not how we have a dialogue.
You're not listening, sir. You're
I am
lecturing these
listening.
people mandates. They don't understand. A mandate is not a law, sir.
Okay, I'm not lecturing. All I was doing was recapping. There were several people who were here.
Very good.
Yeah, 1 second. I'll absolutely get, yeah. So we are not the ones mandating. We are not the ones determining this. However,
Yes, we are the ones mandating. Don't you understand? By complying, we keep this going.
sir, by not complying, we put the town and the school
No,
district.
we do not, sir.
I'm going to ask you one more time if you would
I
like.
ask you to show some courage and some intestinal fortitude and some bravery to stand up. That's what I ask.
I'm going to ask you to continue. I understand your personal issues or your medical issues. However, we cannot have a dialogue like this. This is not the intent of tonight's meeting. We are going to talk about how we're going to return. I was trying to explain what could happen to the town of Pembroke in the Pembroke Public Schools should we not abide by any type of DESI mandate. It's not, believe me, the vote was unanimous. It was 5-0 for those of you who were here. We were not.
We do not have to comply, sir. I'm telling you, from the bottom of my heart, we do not have to comply. You don't have to. You don't have to. Just like I don't have to comply with any BS rules anyone else throws down. If it's a law, I'll respect it. But this is repugnant to the Constitution and in many forms.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on your side, I believe, but I do want to hear what they have to say.
So-
Understand this.
Thank you. Just let me, thank you.
The problem is, it's been going too far to let it get to the bottom
I
line.
understand your frustration, but I do want to hear.
Right.
And we
I
appreciate,
stand corrected. Thank you.
sir, we do,
I will admit when I'm wrong.
I agree.
So I understand your issue with threats. You need to control the outbursts. Otherwise, we're going to have to,
That's part of the disease, man.
I understand that, but I'm just asking you.
I'll try.
We're doing our best here.
Tourette's.
So
I have Tourette's.
I understand. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not questioning it. So if we chose not to abide by the DESI guidelines, the state has at least two areas of recourse. One is they clearly could take legal action against the district. The second is they could withhold funding from the district. About 51% of our funding comes from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If we did not get that funding, then we clearly would not be able to function as a school district.
If we all put up the money.
I'll gladly pay for my own
It's,
kids.
hold on, there was a woman who asked a question back there. Let me get to one other thing. So the money, just so you're aware, is about $14 million? Yeah, so it's not a minor sum of money that we couldn't, if we wanted to, we couldn't. So we're right now trying to do what we can from our standpoint. I understand what you can do as parents, but we have to look at it from the town of Pembroke's point of view and doing what we think in order to run a school district. You had a question, ma'am?
And I just have two things. One is that you've already had funding for this year, correct?
No. So the funding installment's coming quarterly to the town.
Okay, and the second one is, DESE created this mandate, but it's out of their scope of legally, yeah.
So that's not,
Yes.
obviously, that's not their legal opinion.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not their legal opinion. So they believe it's within their scope to enforce the mandate.
No, but it's legally, it's not something that they can do. I don't know
So clearly, and what we're gonna do is let the superintendent give her a report on this. We'll get to public comment after, we'll do this the same way we did this 2 weeks ago. Superintendent will make her report. Anybody who signed in will allow you to make your comments. There was a call from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education earlier today, trying to give some clarification to us as districts, because in talking with other school committee members, they're having some of the same challenges we are. It's not something, again, this is not something we wanted based upon our previous vote or something we want. However, we have, and I understand your concerns, I don't disagree with your concerns, but when you look at what DESE is and what's within their, what they believe is within their authority, this is, we have to do that. Otherwise, we're putting the kids to risk other ways within their education.
That's your opinion.
I'm sorry, we can't run a school.
For, just out of curiosity, what if
Sorry.
you had
How-
funding?
If we didn't have state funding, when would we have to shut down?
When's the next check come? You know what I mean? How
So-
far does that carry you through the year?
So chapter 70 isn't certified until July 1st, so we get our first quarterly payment usually the first week of September. We haven't even received the first quarterly payment yet from chapter 70. You know, that,
So, a month or 2 months?
Do you know how unlikely that is, how good deal that would be if they were to withhold funding from you or us? That would not happen.
Let's make
They
the
would
news.
not do that.
Let's make the news.
They would
It's-
lose. This is,
Let's
they don't
fight.
have the authority to do this.
Fight them.
We can go back and forth on this all night.
Fight for our kids.
I just,
You don't have to go into state law. It's the Constitution, it's a legal period.
then, if that's the point, because the legal opinions that we have,
right,
which we have, because it's not as though we sat here.
And we deserve to know about it if you guys are
We're-
contacting attorneys.
Could you, so, again, we need to have a conversation. We also need to let the superintendent say, we're not trying to fight you on this. We are doing everything we can. We did not, ma'am, you can disagree with that. We haven't sat still since this came down a week and a half. We're gonna get to the superintendent's piece. You'd like to,
Let's get to that because we all
We-
did come here to speak and we all know the mandates. We're very familiar with all things. Everybody who's here is concerned and knows what's going on. So let's just move forward so that we
Which
can
fine.
get to the point where everybody can speak. 'Cause everyone's just gonna keep jumping in otherwise. I think.
I know, I understand that. I'm just trying to, again, level set the playing field of where we are and why we got here and what we've done. So, Erin, would you like to start?
sure, I mean, usually we start with Lisa with the public health data. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to just give an overview of kind of what the
So
health data in the town of Pembroke looks
13 new
like?
cases today, but that's not necessarily today's total. That would be inclusive of Saturday and Sunday. CTC is ramping up from the state's contact tracing collaborative, is ramping up their services, but they still do not include full weekend services. Of those cases, 4 of those people are under the age of 18. They are all symptomatic. Of the people that are contracting, right now 20%-ish are vaccinated individuals. The rest would be unvaccinated individuals. We do not have any fatalities in Pembroke. We do not have any hospitalizations in Pembroke, but our neighboring town, we share health data with neighboring towns for better statistical data. Hanover does have a hospitalized or had at least seeking hospital treatment under age 18 individual, and they did have a fatality last week with underlying medical conditions, but nonetheless, it's worth noting that that person was also fully vaccinated. As far as trending data, last week we had 39 cases, obviously with 13, 14, 15 cases so far this week. That's not a good trend for us to be headed on. HEMA did have a quick discussion today with the town manager, continuing to track the data. Hospitalizations thankfully remain low, but they're not non-existent. State call today reiterated the importance of masking if you're unvaccinated, the importance of a vaccination if you're eligible, and to receive all your vaccinations so you're considered a fully vaccinated individual. Just for the folks here, I'm not looking to get into debate on vaccination, but if you have received one of your vaccinations and you just, I won't go get the other one, understand both for you and your children, that counts to Pembroke's statistics. So remember how they talked about the statistic, and if this is enforced, please keep in mind that 80% becomes very important. We're at 75% among a lot of our school-age children. I'll stand corrected by the superintendent if she tells me otherwise. Not the youngest group, because they just became eligible, but of the older groups. So 75 would be really awesome if that was 80, because then this becomes really a moot point for those that are tracking that kind of statistic. So if vaccination is something you're considering for you or your family, please do complete your full round of vaccination. For J&J, obviously most kids aren't eligible for that, but that's one shot. For your Moderna, that is 2 shots, and for your Pfizer, which is the vaccine available to most children, that would also be 2 shots. So if that's something you're interested in, that is something to consider in your decision-making processes. And that pretty much brings us up to date. They did go over the legal authorities of Board of Health's to make health decisions. That was covered as a topic, and that the standing under an emergency order of DESE was also covered. The state feels pretty confident in their legal standing there, at least based on the conversations we had today with State Advisory Council.
And you have a Board of Health meeting tomorrow at 1 PM?
Yes,
in
Pembroke Town Hall.
Okay. Is this gonna be a topic for that?
My understanding is yes.
Okay. Is at this point, based upon the agenda, and I don't want you to say anything that you don't know, is there any plans to change where we are now, or is there any thought or anticipate discussion?
My understanding is yes, but the board members have not all shared their thoughts with me, so I
That's fine,
could not
sharing the thought.
hypothesize
On
as to
the-
what
what is-
motion.
what is-
But the
you want-
agenda does say masking impossible and vote in action by the Pembroke Board of Health, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Perfect. Just to update the numbers that Lisa shared, so when we did meet on August 17th, I shared with you our vaccination rates from August 12th. At that time, 49% of 12 to 15-year-olds were vaccinated, 75% of 16 to 19-year-olds. As of this past Thursday's municipal vaccination report, 53% of 12 to 15-year-olds and 78% of 16 to 19-year-olds. So there has been some upward movement there, but we are still short of the 80% goalpost set by DESE for that October 1st date. I am going to go over the masking mandate from DESE, and so the mandate is that all students and staff K through 12, regardless of vaccination status, must wear a mask at all times while indoors at school. Student athletes that are participating in indoor activities must be masked. So for us, for our fall sports, that is obviously volleyball, and anytime strength and conditioning work happens inside the weight room or practices are held within the gym. Masking is not required while eating or drinking indoors or while outdoors at any time. As a school district, we have made the decision to extend the masking to pre-K students. So this is consistent with the way we approached the DESE recommendations and requirements last year. Because our preschool age students are in a school building with our other students, and there is an overlap of those populations, we also have students within those classrooms that turn 5 within the first few days of school for consistency purposes. And I'm sure many of you saw that the EEC met this morning about requiring masks in standalone daycare settings as well. So there are federal mask mandates. I went over these the last time, so that requires that all students are masked at all times on our buses and transportation, so that includes our special education vans and all of our yellow school buses. In addition, all staff and students must be masked at all times while in the health office. Those are federal mandates, not from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we talked a little bit last time about some of the best practices that happened last year that we're looking to keep in place for this current school year. Again, outside of the masking mandate, there are no requirements set forth from DESE as far as student spacing, hand washing, sanitation, disinfection, HVAC, any of that. The only thing that they've asked is that districts consider continuing to be lenient on the attendance policy, similar to last year. If the message to students and staff is that you should stay home at the first site of illness, we want to make sure that our attendance policy supports that practice. In addition to that, we've listed here some of the protocols that will be in place. So students will always be at least 3 feet or more apart in all of our settings. I know that some of you, when either you walked in the front door or came in through this backside, were able to walk by some of our classrooms. 3 feet of spacing is much narrower than we've ever had students before. So in most instances, our students are more than 3 feet apart in all of our classroom settings. This year, we have the opportunity to go back to some of the elementary practices that we weren't able to have last year, like morning meeting on rugs and whatnot. So students will always be 3 feet apart, regardless of it's a student desk, a classroom rug, seating in the cafeteria, being here in the library, any of those. The only exception to that is physical education classes when they're occurring outside. Obviously, I'm not sure that we needed a global pandemic to tell us that hand washing was important. Being the mother of 2 elementary age boys, hand washing is always important, and that will continue to be reinforced in our classrooms. So you'll remember last year the requirement was that students had the opportunity to wash hands twice per day. So it was recommended at the change of activity, so before snack and after snack, before lunch and after lunch. We continue to keep those portable hand washing stations out at the middle school and the high school. All of our elementary classrooms have sinks in them. At the middle school and second and high school level, our science labs also have sinks in addition to the bathrooms. So purely comfortable with the fact that students will have ample opportunity to wash their hands throughout the day. So we will continue to reinforce that. And then, of course, always using hand sanitizer is an alternative when hand washing is not able to be done in the space. As far as HVAC and air quality, we spent a lot of time on this last year when we were talking about reopening schools for the first time. There were definitely best practices that we got from that, knowing that the high school itself is a closed air conditioning, a closed system building, meaning the windows do not open because of the HVAC systems there. We did install those UV light sanitizers at Pembroke High School, so every time the light passes through the large HVAC units, the rooftop units at the high school, it is sanitized. Each of our rooms has an air exchange rate that far exceeds the OSHA requirements for a public school building. So we will obviously continue to monitor our air quality. We did, I think, 3 instances of air quality testing last school year. We will continue to do that. Obviously, we'll continue to keep windows open whenever possible to increase the outside air that is being brought into the school buildings. It was a request of parents that we maintain the COVID-19 dashboard on our school website. So I know that Sharon was putting the finishing touches on that today. We do have 5 active student cases right now, obviously not due to school-based transmission or exposure. There's 1 case at the high school, 2 at Hobbamock, and 2 at Bryanville Elementary School currently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about testing and quarantining. There's a couple of slides that cover pretty much the same information. One of it's text, one of it's a graphic. I can show it to you however you want. We can talk about it in whatever depth you'd like, but there are obviously categories of folks that are exempt from testing and quarantine protocols. So again, any asymptomatic, fully vaccinated close contact would be exempt from testing and quarantining. Classroom close contact. So we've had a lot of conversation about what that has looked like. Last year, you'll remember, our student desks were 6 feet apart, meaning that students were not considered close contacts at that spacing. At the elementary level, we obviously had some close contact tracing that happened in classrooms because students move about the room quite frequently at the elementary levels, and it's self-contained with the same 18 to 24 students for the entire day. This year, CDC guidance states that students that are 3 feet apart and masked are not close contacts in the classroom. So there would be no close contact tracing in our classroom settings with our current furniture setup. So 3 feet of spacing would not be identifying any close contacts. So at our buildings, we'd be looking at identifying close contacts at times when students are unmasked at 3 feet of space. So that could be snack and lunch if they're eating indoors. Again, obviously the intent is for folks to be eating outside as much as possible, but again, weather permitting, and as we get later into the fall and earlier into the winter, more students will be eating inside the building. There are no such things as close contacts on the bus, as long as all the individuals are masked and the windows are open.
Everything so far has been
This is not from us. We're just, she's just.
Don't have to do it. Doesn't smell the smell.
It's being delivered to us.
So the messengers, you guys gotta take some responsibility in this.
So
I think
the
we've
masking
taken.
on the school bus is a federal mandate. We do not have any say on whether.
Talking about masks, honestly,
I'll see what the government's doing in this country.
Federal mandate is not a law.
Holy moly.
they don't wanna count transmissions on
Let
close
them tell us what to do with our kids.
What's that?
Yeah. So students
Yeah, we're probably
most
gonna, we might, okay.
more often than not are on our bus for less than the 15 minutes that is considered a close contact point. Again, close contact is 15 minutes, cumulatively 15 minutes or more within 6 feet of space unmasked of somebody that is tested positive for COVID. So again, there's no close contacts identified on the bus regardless of spacing, understanding that everyone will be masked and the windows need to be open. We did get a lot of feedback from families last year that saw buses going by and calling and saying the windows aren't open. The windows need to be open 4 inches in order for the proper airflow on the bus to happen. So the windows are not necessarily open all of the way. The vendor that we use for transportation for a student has been a great partner in this and has adhered to every safety protocol that has been put in place, whether by us, the DESE, or the Department of Transportation by which they're governed. as with students and staff last year, if you have had COVID within the past 90 days, you are not considered a close contact and are exempt again from the testing and quarantining protocols. This is just it again, just to talk a little bit about the spacing as far as CDC and the Department of Public Health. Obviously, even if you're asymptomatic and vaccinated close contact, there is still self-monitoring that must happen for 14 days, even if you are not held to close contact and quarantining protocols. You do still need to self-monitor for 14 days. If you are an asymptomatic, unvaccinated close contact and you do not quarantine or you do not test, you do need to quarantine for 10 days. You may return to school on day 11 as long as you're asymptomatic, but you must continue to monitor for symptoms for 14 days. If you are choosing to test, you can test on day 5 or later, and if you are negative, you may return after day 7, so you may return on day 8. For those individuals that are choosing to test, the district is conditionally approved a test to stay protocol. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but the overall goal of that is for students and staff to be able to take a rapid antigen test each day in school for 5 days. Provided the results are negative, they continue on and join their class for instruction and educational opportunities. Anybody that is not a close contact but has symptoms, again, we are encouraging folks on the onset of any type of symptoms to stay home. Similar to last year, you must provide a negative test result before you can return to school. So what is Test to Stay? Test to Stay is a protocol available to unvaccinated individuals in a school setting that were identified as close contacts. Obviously, it is your consent to participate or not participate. When consenting, what you are consenting to is being tested each morning for 5 school days following the known exposure using the BinaxNOW rapid antigen test. So again, we went over this the last time. That's a lower anterior nasal swab administered by our school nurse and medical professional. Once the results are received, they generally take about 10 minutes. I think the longest I've ever heard it taking is 15 minutes. Students with a negative test result would be able to rejoin their class for instruction. Anybody identified in a school setting as a close contact must wear a mask regardless of the setting. So if you are vaccinated or unvaccinated but identified as a close contact, you must remain masked for the period of those 10 days.
The parent be present for this testing? They swab their nose?
So part of the consent is for the school nurses to do it. If you are if you're not interested in consenting to it, you don't have to.
I mean, present, the parent be there in the nurse's office watching it?
You would have to drive your student to school on the days where they're being tested, so you could absolutely watch the testing.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, if you are an identified close contact, vaccinated or unvaccinated, anytime you are in the building, you must be masked for the period of the 10 quarantine days. That is regardless of a mask mandate. So even if the mask mandate is lifted or we are eligible for the waiver on October 1st, you would still need to remain masked if you have been identified as a close contact. You must be 3 feet apart when eating or drinking if you're a close contact. Individuals who do participate in the Test to Stay protocol may also participate in extracurricular and sports activities, provided that they are adhering to the protocols for Test to Stay, meaning they're getting a test each morning that is negative. There are times where we have events and sports that take place on non-school days. In order for students to participate on those days, a test would still be required. So we'd have to have the school nurse administer a test the day of a sporting event or a band concert. If it were a Saturday or a school vacation week, in order for them to participate. The form for Test and Stay is a digital consent form. It will be located on the Health Services tab on the website. We can also post it under the COVID-19 resources. It is a pretty self-explanatory consent form. I did walk through it earlier today just to see the user-friendliness of it. It is managed by CIC, which is the provider through the Department of Public Health that provides free testing to school districts. That is all that I have for returning to learn. The second part of the conversation is around the updated policy.
Let's hold off on
Yep.
that. So what I'll do is I'll grab the sheet in a second, so if anybody else wants to speak, please just go sign in. I'll go around the table again.
Just before you go, I just wanted to, in your packets is the flow charts that DESC put out about the protocols. I did copy and paste them into this appendices so that folks that do access these documents online can go through them. It kind of spells out exactly what we went through as far as if you're COVID positive, if you choose to test, if you choose not to test as a close contact, and what, it's a flow chart, yes, no.
So this isn't online today, it'll be online
Tomorrow,
tomorrow.
yeah.
And we'll also put on the legal opinion. Can you talk about the legal opinion before
Sure.
we go to the committee? Who it came from and what it says, and we'll get that onto the website tomorrow.
So, school superintendents were provided with a legal opinion through the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, Executive Director Tom Scott, that came from Long and DiPietro, which is a law firm in Hingham, Massachusetts. Mike Long is their lead attorney there, and he provides, Yeah.
This was not, the state did not pay for this. This was paid for by an association that the district belongs to.
Correct.
So it's independent of DESI.
correct. In addition, we have our own attorney, school attorney, so our attorney is Emerson and Emerson out of Westwood. We did also get a legal opinion from Joe, the attorney that we work with, in regards to the validity of a mandate coming from DESE into a school system. So his legal opinion echoes what Long and DiPietro has provided in writing. So I will post this to the website. It does include case law. I know there was obviously, again, some conversation at the East Long Meadow School Committee meeting citing case law. There is also case law cited in this opinion as well as to the validity of masking, talking about individual rights or the common good, talking about what parents' rights are to direct the education of their students, masking, student discipline, handbook infractions, et cetera. So I will
That's
post that.
online.
It's
I will
going to be.
post it. So
It will
once
be online
we
tomorrow.
share, just so that folks get how it works, once I share something in a public meeting, it becomes a public record, and then we post it to the website. If there's something that you hear me reference or that we talk about and doesn't immediately get posted, just shoot me an email. I'm not meaning not to post it. It just sometimes kind of gets lost between tonight and tomorrow morning. But everything that we share here becomes a public document after the meeting. Thank you. I'm just gonna grab my laptop.
Yep. So while you're grabbing that, we'll go around the table and then I'll pull the sheet and then we can take comment and then we can see what we need to move on. Lance, questions or comments at this point? I'm just gonna go this way.
Yeah, we just said what was the legal was just in support of what, I didn't hear what the
So
result was.
the legal opinion was in reference to, does the state have the authority to do it? And they cited various case laws saying that the state, various cases in case law to state that they believe
It is their legal opinion that the state has the right to enforce a mandate on a school district.
What is the case law, please, so we can look at it?
Sure. Yep. So there are a couple of different ones in here. There is reference to,
Was it a medical mandate or a different kind of mandate?
so there's both. There's some reference to a smallpox vaccination. That is Jacobson versus Massachusetts.
Can I just clarify that that man did not have to be vaccinated? His penalty was $5 fine.
So there's also reference to pending lawsuit in Michigan around the state's ability to enforce a lockdown. There is Childs versus Commonwealth in 1938.
Citing stuff from 1938.
Case law is case law.
Sounds like a bunch of BS.
But relevance is important too, like a lockdown has nothing to do with a medical mandate.
I
So
understand.
again, I'm happy to post the
We'll-
legal
yeah.
opinion, which cites all of the case law. At the end of the day, where it boils down to is a law that is not new. So, and local parentis gives a school district the right to act as a parent and direct and supervise instruction and actions of students while in our
Wait,
building.
what is the law? What is
And
the law?
local parentis.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Again, I will post the legal opinion so that you can see it for yourself.
I just
So
want
how
that
can
law. that
we,
you
how
just-
can we counter you guys when you won't give us the information to
We're,
do it?
we're giving you the information.
That's your
I
information
think the
tomorrow.
law was that said that the teachers can act as the parent.
So in local parentis, it grants school officials the authority to direct and supervise the activity of students while they're in school as if they were the parent. It is not a new law.
That's
Child
got nothing
abuse
to do
isn't-
with.
So it's part of the commentaries on the laws of New England, Volume 1, Chapter 16, Section 2, line 441.
So,
Restricting someone's breathing is not applicable to that law.
especially with masks at work, you know? I mean,
I would say you guys should get a second opinion.
So
They like
what
that
we,
opinion.
let me get to the committee. I'll explain what we've done so far, because we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. We did not sit still for 2 weeks when, well, actually, for a week and a half, when the Commonwealth made their decision on the 17th. We spoke at 7:30 that morning because we got a heads up, and then we started to determine what else could we do, including things as late as yesterday. What is within our power? Now, that said, I know there were, thing I'll equate it to is about a year ago, the state was going to mandate the flu vaccine, for those of you who remember. What we decided to do is they were gonna mandate it effective December 31st, correct? We held off and we did not take any action making it a policy, and we waited for things to play out. What happened was there were several lawsuits from the community, from community members, not from school, was it districts or no?
Families.
It was from families, and we cannot take action against the Commonwealth. That's, you have to, you can do it. We cannot as a body. You have to understand, and this is what, and believe me, I appreciate the frustration.
What good is this committee?
I appreciate the passion, and believe me, we've had a great dialogue 2 weeks ago. What we are bound to do is we have two things, powers granted to us. It's budget, which people can come around school committee meetings, we talk about budget probably for most of the board, in policy. Policy obviously is based on things that are within our purview, what we're allowed to judge on or set policy on based upon the Education Reform Act, which has been revised as late as 2018, came out, I think, in 93, I was gonna say 92. So that's what our guardrails are. We have to work within them. When DESE comes down and says a mandate, we may not like it. Many times we don't. We call them unfunded mandates in some cases. But if we don't act within it, legal action, talk about indemnification, they can take legal action against us personally.
Good.
I mean, we could take legal again.
Actually, in that case, no, because we're following the law at that point.
There's no
We're
leadership.
following the mandate. So, again,
We have no leaders in this room.
sir, this is the I'm not going to speak again. You know what, we can have a dialogue, but you have to be respectful. You haven't been respectful. We believe we've shown leadership by what we took for action 2 weeks ago and what we are trying to do this evening. We are doing everything within our control. Since the state mandate came down, we got the legal opinion through the Mass Association of School Committees, which will publish to the website. We
And I
got-
asked her, like, 2 weeks ago, I wasn't here.
So 2 weeks ago, this committee voted to adopt what the DESE guideline was at the time, which was to make masks optional within the district. So if you wanted to send your child with a mask, you could. If you wanted to send them without, you couldn't. We also talked about the test to return protocol, which gave families who were either unvaccinated or close contacts ability to get children back in school as quickly as possible. That was within our purview. That's what we were allowed to do. The Commonwealth changed the rules on us unexpectedly.
Change the goalpost? No way.
So, sir, I'm not.
No disrespect, but if you were going along with DESE's recommendation 2 weeks ago and you were following what well over the majority of parents wanted already, where do you see yourself placing that?
That's not true, though.
You just said that. You just
I
said
said we
that-
follow the DESE guideline to make masks optional.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
I said, okay, that's what I just said. So if you were following that 2 weeks ago, and you're also following the general consensus of what almost all the parents want in Pembroke, where do you see that's taking like a massive leadership role, or like a lot of leadership? You're just going along with both what the state and the parents want.
So
We're not seeing the leadership.
I'll say it one more
I'm just calling you out on that point.
I'll say it one more time. You can call it out all you want. But we make a decision as a board to not follow the guideline, and they pull state funding, we don't have a school district.
I didn't say that. That's not what I asked, but that's okay.
Give us the opportunity to vote on that, though. I mean, I understand they're treating it like a
can't.
puppet. They're, well, hey, you want this money?
We
You
can't.
know what I mean?
So we can
It's all about.
so I'm going to let the committee make their comments or ask their questions. We'll take the public comment, then we have to move on.
Can I just ask a routine one question?
Sure.
Is there no formalized appeal process for you guys to, you read a synchronized law, whatever. I have to look up that name of the law firm, but there has to be some type of process for you guys to file
There
an
is,
appeal.
and that's what the letter.
So we're trying to get to. So the other thing we're trying to
Is that
vote on.
Hanover?
Yeah, the other thing, so Hanover on, I think, I don't even- the 26th, end of last week, they voted to petition Governor Baker to return the decision to local control. I'll read what the letter says, because even though the committee has it, I need to read it into the record so that we can.
Is he the only power to be that can overturn?
It's either he or the Commissioner of Education, Department of Education. Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So it really comes down to Jeff Riley or Charlie Baker, one of those two. Right now.
So there's no chance.
And just to clarify, one or the other, you're not saying both have to approve, right?
One or the other.
Okay.
But as somebody asked me the question, one's not making, or the
The
local
governor
board
would
of health.
supersede,
The
and then
supersede,
the
yeah.
only other thing that could come in is Department of Public Health could issue anything on the health ordinances, both at the state level as well as at the local level. That would also, so at the state level, that would be the Department of Public Health. The commissioner just changed, it was Commissioner Burrell. Has he named an interim commissioner? I don't think so. Commissioner Burrell just stepped down, she had served for 6 years. I do not know who the new commissioner is, if he has even appointed one. Locally, the local Board of Health is meeting tomorrow at 1 at Pembroke Town Hall. That is your own elected officials. The three gentlemen will be discussing the issue at hand and everything else. Something else I just want to make people aware of, I know that some people feel like there's no ramifications to the town for just saying, forget you, state, I'm going to do whatever I want. I want to let everyone in this room know, if you weren't already aware, that East Bridgewater had terminated its health agent. Someone lost their job over this because they would not enforce these guidelines. I understand, you can laugh, but it's not funny to the guy who just lost his livelihood.
GoFundMe, I will gladly give him money.
I understand.
Gladly
But-
give him money.
but-
I'll give
but-
you money. I
but-
will give you money.
It's not me. You have to
Fund
understand.
you.
It is scary,
I will
guys.
give you
guys are
coverage.
in a
I will
terrible
fund you.
position.
It's not a matter,
And I wanna
it's
say
not
real
that
quick,
simple.
I do appreciate what you guys do, okay? These people are, they're not making millions of dollars. In fact, I don't, you guys.
They don't make
We
a
don't
dime.
get paid.
They
This
don't
is
make a dime.
volunteer.
Volunteer positions, like, thank you. We're just asking you to try and fight for these kids. Listen,
So-
the kids are unaffected by this. I mean, really, it's the flu.
Listen, you were here 2 weeks ago, right? You
Yeah.
made a
And I
great
thought you
speech.
guys had a
But-
great plan.
But
It
here
sounded pretty solid.
was the thing. And part of the reason for the letter, again, we'll get to it, we're trying to get there.
I know.
We're trying to get
Sounds
there.
like it's gonna be good.
But the part of the purpose of the letter was let us make the decision based upon local data. When we made a decision, and we all made them different, everybody has different reasons for making the decision. But I will speak for myself. We did it based upon the data that we had for Pembroke. The thing is, that decision then 3 days later, inexplicably, got taken from us. We're just asking to let us make the decision based on the data for Pembroke. When the governor and commissioner made their decision, they made it for the Commonwealth, comparing the same thing for East Longmeadow was mentioned earlier to
Oh, they did.
Worcester,
Thank
to
you.
New Bedford, to Pembroke, whatever. They were treating everybody the same. What we've learned is it is not the same. You heard the whole comment. Lisa spoke for probably 40 minutes the last meeting. The data in Pembroke is different than the data in other communities. The data today is different than it was 2 weeks ago, right? And we're trying to, all we're asking for, what we hopefully will be asking for.
So, what would you, trying to frame this question correctly, what would you like to know about the data? Are the cases higher currently in August?
I want to know the origination of said data.
As far as where are we getting positive
Yes.
testing results from?
Where are you getting these
People that
data
are,
from?
people that are selecting to go and get a COVID test for whatever reason, whether it be at the advice of their medical professionals or walking into, say, a convenient MD and saying, I want a COVID test, that data, if positive, is then uploaded on a state database called Maven. It is attached to that individual via their birth date and their name, and that data is posted. So it's by a medical provider of some format.
I just put it out there. I don't know if people don't realize this or if we're just ignoring it. The CDC did come out with a statement saying that the PCR test cannot isolate the COVID virus. So therefore, the flu is also considered positive in the PCR testing and a number of other South
we talked about,
We
the
just
yeah.
pretending that
It is. It's
these
all a bunch
test
of
numbers
BS,
are
guys.
accurate, and you have to acknowledge that.
So we talked about the PCR test committee
And then
upstairs.
they talk about the variant too, okay? The variants, right? They can't tell the difference between the flu and COVID, but they can tell
There's no
the
test
difference.
They're not testing for the variant, those are for people that would, the only variant determinants they've done are people seeking additional medical help. Usually that's someone that's going to be having a more severe situation. Have they made medical hypothesis based on the fact that the people that are getting more treatment that have been vaccinated and then becoming sick enough to need medical treatment, are they then doing further testing and determining that's the Delta variant? Yes. Is it 100% accurate?
But
You're
how do
absolutely
they
correct.
tell the difference? They can't tell the difference between the
With,
flu
with,
and COVID.
because it's further testing, it's
There's
someone
only
getting
one
further.
lab in the entire United States that can isolate the Delta and other variants.
You are correct.
They're in Connecticut.
Correct.
There's no way they're sending all the samples from the United States.
I didn't say
to
all, I
Connecticut,
said
getting
people,
their numbers up.
people that are more severe, that are getting more medical treatment, they are. If you are hospitalized, they are doing some more in-depth and blood studies. Is that happening with every
That
person?
doesn't-
Of course
That's
not.
not a good representation, because it's a very
You're-
small number of people.
You're
that have
absolutely
the
correct. It
virus.
would be the more medically afflicted. You're 100% right. But you just asked, and I was just trying to answer that medically
Listen.
speaking. And here's the other thing to that. Any one of us could be getting bad data. But where are you getting your data from? Everyone here has cited different court cases and different places of information and bacterial spread. Where are you getting your data? From the exact same people, medical professionals, right? I mean, when you talk about bacteria spread in a mask, you're reading some sort of online article that was written by a medical person, correct? That's
Come out against.
right, but again, you're getting your data from a medical person just like I'm getting mine. Do medical people always agree? Has no one in this room had gone to two different medical professionals and gotten two different opinions? I have.
So,
No, I understand.
so,
I understand, but what I'm saying is, at a certain point of time,
Yeah.
unless you
Yeah.
know for a fact for yourself, you are taking someone that is more educated and more knowledgeable at some point and trusting their viewpoint, opinion, or the guidance they're giving you.
So,
Unless someone
let's-
here's a
Lisa.
doctor diagnosing themselves,
So-
that's what you have to do.
so let's kind of bring,
If you know how to do research, scientific research, you know whether a study was designed correctly or it was designed to create a particular outcome. So
But all studies are designed
So,
with an outcome in
let's-
mind.
They're not doing
Hold on,
randomized,
hold
they're
on.
not
Sure
doing
they are.
randomized
But
trials.
hold on, because that's way outside the, you can happily,
yeah.
you can bring that up tomorrow at the Board of Health meeting, 1 o'clock at Town Hall. Right, because that's within what they're responsible for. All we can do this evening is, obviously, listen to the superintendent's report. See if we can get, if we want to get another legal opinion, if there's another legal opinion out there, possible. Or if people have other options that they can say, we'll happily look into it. And we can look at the Hanover letter and do that. Other than that, the other options really would have difficult consequences on trying to run a school district. Believe me, we've heard you, we saw the survey, right? Our survey was completely different than the one the governor cited when he made his recommendation on the 20th. We understand the differences. We're doing everything we can based upon what the data showed us, what we have the power to do, and what we can do based on, I guess, where we are in the.
But
in
if
the
you
si-
firmly believed that they had to wear masks, why are you all sitting right next to each other, not wearing masks inside? Like, something's telling me that you don't agree with it either. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's given that sense of like, you also don't agree, but you have to because of the money. You know what I mean?
Not for me.
It's just, I have, and I'm not trying to, but strongly, I know of 5 people that, from the vaccine, have had reactions, and that's in my small circle, okay? So,
Right.
my husband's in the medical field, he's prepared to lose his job, there's so many nurses that have walked out, and that's, like I said, everybody has their own
Listen,
opinion.
there-
If you wanna wear 3 masks, that's fine, if you want to, whatever, but my son, I don't want the RSV, he's had asthma in the past, I don't want the RSV and all that stuff coming out.
Censor all
We get-
I have real beliefs. I firmly believe in the
We-
vitamin C and the D and all that, but that's my belief, like, and I've
We
seen
get
people benefit from it. But I'm just saying, if you guys are sitting there selling this, you're not doing what you're selling. You're not, you know what I mean?
I'm not sure
I-
we're selling
Respectfully.
anything, to be honest. I think we're all just trying to get through this. Look, our job is, we haven't even really heard the presentation. I think that's what you're all missing. Like, we all sort of like, you know, we've all listened to everything you've written to us, and, you know, I think we've all like sort of watched the Middleborough School Committee meeting and, you know, listened to that doctor who spoke, and we're all listening, and we want to hear you, but we need to get through a meeting first, and we have an order to do it. It's not that we don't, everything you're saying is valid. I'm just saying, everything you're saying is
I
valid.
thought you was done.
No, we're definitely not done, we haven't.
No, we're trying to get.
So
trying to get
just
the
to
community
clarify,
to-
the folks at home can't hear what anybody in the audience is saying if you don't stand up to the microphone. So the bulk of the feedback that's coming into the school committee mailbox
So let's
is
do,
that they
can
can't
we,
hear you.
can we do this? Because, again, we're happy, we want to listen, right? And I think one of the things where the disconnect is, we're trying to explain what we can do. I know it's not exactly what you want us to do, we get that, but what if we do what you're asking, it's unfortunately not feasible for us to run a school district, and that's the problem. So we're trying to go down other avenues. You as individuals and as parents and as community members and anyone else can do what you can do, right? Whether it's whatever, and we talked about some of those things earlier. We cannot do those. We only can do what we're allowed to, whether you call it by law, by whatever. And it's not just, we're not looking at just a mandate, what we're allowed to do based upon the statutes that govern school committees. So with that, let me go to the school committee members, see if they have questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, can I
and
just
then-
ask, does anyone have any other medical questions, only because I'm getting texted from home? I just want to answer any medical only, that's all I do, and I want to be clear, I am not a medical professional. I'd make that clear enough. So I am going to be dispensing the information that the state has given to me, and I have to take them at face value, and if they're lying, deceiving, or doing anything else, I am not educated as a doctor to defy them or challenge them. I'm going to freely admit that. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go right, because I saw your hand first.
Yeah, Lisa, you said 15 new cases in
Yes.
Pembroke. Do we know how many were vaccinated?
Yes, 4 of them. 4 adults were vaccinated. They are considered breakthrough cases with mild symptoms. The 4 under 18, I do not believe any of them were vaccinated. I'm thinking through the records in my mind. No, none of them were vaccinated. 2 of them wouldn't have been eligible.
If you have a child that, alright, so you have a child that has asthma documented by his physician. There's instances with a nurse where you have to go under the mask, had to take breaks. If the physician's not willing to write for prescription that he gives to a patient, child, and homeschooling is the only other option. You do.
I would reach out both to the Department of Public Health, because my understanding is if you have a medical condition that qualifies, your physician is supposed to do that on behalf of the child. I don't have an answer for that. I'm telling you again what the state told me. I would say then, I'm going to switch into parent mode. If I had a physician and I had a child with a breathing condition that couldn't breathe with a mask on, and my physician's not willing to do that, I'm going to be really honest with you, I'm going to be looking for a new physician. But that's my opinion as a parent. As from DPH, I would say that that's what they've said, that doctors that have a patient that meets those eligibility criteria, they're supposed to be writing that documentation. So that's the best advice I have,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
we reached out. So in the
That's-
event we do decide to homeschool,
Yeah.
until masks with our child, are we allowed to return back to school after homeschooling?
So
That's- yeah.
homeschooling
That's a
is a
question for
request
me.
for an academic school year. So you're requesting to homeschool your student for the school year.
Even though you guys can accommodate the children without wearing masks?
So under the Charles decision, which is what governs homeschool, you're requesting approval for homeschool. What you provide to us is the outline of the curriculum and the materials that you'll be using to meet either the 900 or the 990 hours of instructional time required by law. So it is, you're committing to a school year.
So in the event these masks come up, the kid cannot return back to the school?
That's not the way it's written.
So, just,
So, hold on one second, let me ask follow-up questions, because, so, can they petition if there's space available to come back?
Right, we'll absolutely meet with families that are looking to come back. You know, obviously, our class setups are based off of who's enrolled on the first day of school. Also, it is I know that it's not a popular opinion, but it is disruptive to the learning environment, to the students in the other classroom, because as parents, you are educating with a curriculum that is vastly different than what we're supplying in the classroom by choice. So some folks use tools for learning, some use the homeschool network. It's not Envision Math. So your student would be rejoining a classroom without any of the.
Yeah,
And
Let's-
just to clarify, like, let's just say the student, they couldn't get a note from their doctor, they could certainly talk with their social worker or whatever, right, and maybe get something of that nature instead, like.
So you need a note signed by a medical
by a medical
professional in order
professional.
to get a
It doesn't have
mask
to be-
exemption.
It doesn't have to be just the medical doctor.
Yeah,
So
so
it has-
within, so within
It
your
has to be,
medical.
it has to be a
Hold on.
medical
We're going
doctor.
back to where we were
It
trying
has
to
to
get
be a
us.
medical doctor, a PA, or I think there's a nurse practitioner, the
Nurse
three
practitioner.
signatories.
And so I just want to go back to the question on the table. So if it's not the child's physician, but there is another professional of those descriptions within the medical care facility, perhaps one of them within the medical network. For example, I use South Shore Medical, so if my personal doctor wouldn't, but I could talk to a respiratory or a pulmonary specialist that would, that is another option you might want to pursue. But I just want to get back to just medical, because I'm
I
sorry.
just want to say something in response to that, into the microphone, to make sure it's on record too. I'm not sure if an IEP is involved or not, but if there's a medical reason, if there is they cannot be denied FAPE. Students come into and out of districts all the time. It's a non-issue. For someone to be welcomed back into a district and to be discriminated against because they chose to homeschool for an amount
We
of
didn't,
time?
yep, we didn't
Oh,
say.
no, it is
so-
discrimination.
Hold on. We didn't say that. What we said.
You just said that.
No, we
request
did,
a
no,
homeschool for an
so hold on, we
academic year.
didn't.
That is the
We didn't, that
process.
was not the comment. So you're taking the comment, taking it out of context. So what we're trying, when the homeschool request comes to the principal, who has the ability to approve them, which I'm sure you
Wait,
know.
no, I
I have
understand
the-
this.
I have
Hold
the
on,
ability.
hold on.
It's the
It's-
superintendent that has the ability to
To
approve.
approve it,
homeschool
sorry,
requests.
because it used to be.
I'm just talking about the
No, I
return.
understand,
I'm just
but
talking
let me
about the
finish. The request is made for the academic year.
I'm just talking about the
I
return.
understand that, let me get to that.
You don't need to, I know that part. I'm just talking about the return to school.
The return to school is a petition, and we have to then weigh what the request
Right.
was. So it's not, we're not trying to
It's doable,
discriminate.
though. It's not something that's like, I just want to be clear. The kids come in and out of districts all the time. It's very doable.
Absolutely. and there-
Absolutely.
and
That's
there-
all. I
We're
just
not-
wanted to clarify
yeah,
that.
But
absolutely.
as a parent, when you're petitioning to homeschool, you're setting out your curriculum and your hours
So-
for the school year.
so-
So we've had families that take a sabbatical for the months of September and October and don't do any traditional schoolwork until November or December. It would be very difficult for that student, if masking was the reason why they homeschooled, it would be very difficult for that student to join their fourth grade class on November 1st if they have not done any curricular work for September.
I can understand that perspective, but every student has the right to FAPE, and that is a denial of FAPE. They have a right to be in the least restrictive environment possible. If he decides that a mask is what he's comfortable with removal is what they're comfortable coming back to school with, you have no right to deny them coming back, because you are
So
in
you
fact
seek
denying
approval for the
FAPE.
school year and you receive approval for the school year.
I understand, but there is middle ground there that's not being acknowledged.
Which is, what we said, you may not have heard it, but we'll.
No,
I'll
I
repeat
did
again.
hear it.
I'll repeat
You're not
again.
hearing
No,
me. I did
We are
hear
hearing
it.
you. We're very familiar with this, right? Because just like you, we deal with this a lot with districts. So, within the district, with students coming and going. So at this point, I've got to let the committee ask their questions.
One clarification. 'cause
Be
just a
real quick, and then-
Verbiage clarification.
Yep.
It's talking about homeschooling. What's the fallback plan? You're gonna have, potentially a bunch of kids that aren't gonna come to school because they're not wearing masks. You have possibly punishment for kids that aren't wearing masks from a disciplinary standpoint. And then you have kids that are gonna be out for 10 days because they're not gonna conform to the testing rules. What's the fallback plan on remote learning? We're gonna go like last year?
So we're not allowed, under the DESE requirements right now, to offer remote as an option to family. Those minutes and hours do not count as time on learning for the 900 and the 990. Remote learning is not an option on the table now for any school district.
So what's that lawsuit gonna look like against you guys for denying students from being in school, basically, from any type of remote learning? You have a potential.
And I don't
look at
think
the
it's-
percentage.
Yeah.
Look at the percentage of kids that aren't gonna be coming to school. It's coming.
No one shows up tomorrow, what are you gonna do?
It's coming. How many kids are
What if
gonna
we
not
all
wear
don't
masks
show
tomorrow?
up tomorrow?
It's coming.
That's a
I'm telling
choice you make as a parent. There's compulsory attendance, kids can be truant. There's, pathways available to the school district to enforce attendance, force you to withdraw. I don't think that is the outcome that any one of us is looking for, not us, not them as a school committee, not myself as a superintendent, and not you as parents. I just think it's important that I know it's not what you want to hear, and it's hard to hear as a parent.
It's not hard to hear for me. You
The
have to
school
be
committee can
prepared.
only
It's
make.
preparation.
The school committee can only make decisions that are within their purview. They do not have the ability to put in place a protocol that is less strict than what is required by the Department of Public Health or the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. You can have an opinion on whether or not you think they should or what's best for your kid. They, as a governing body, do not have the authority to put in place a less strict protocol than what is being mandated by the state.
The health and mental well-being of your child, I think, is more important than any education. So if I feel like he needs to go without a mask, he should go without a mask. But then again, I don't want to send him in without a mask to set an example, you know, and just to be like, you know, I have a deep belief that it's gonna make me sicker. Do you know what I mean? So we're here as parents because we strongly believe in the health and well-being. So screw what Dusty says, in my opinion.
Right, and as a parent, you have the right to say, screw what Desi says. As a school board and as a superintendent, I don't have the right to say.
You have to look at the, it's
Okay,
the money, it's
so-
the money, it's
You
the
made it clear
pocket
that you're
thing.
choosing not.
So,
I understand, and I thank you. I mean, I'm sorry I have to say that, it's not you, but I just, that's how I literally
No, we-
feel, like, I'm so strong about it. And you guys are in a terrible, like, I wouldn't want to be in your spot, honestly.
And we didn't choose to be in this. We chose to be in this role, but we did not choose for Desi
Listen.
to change our decision 2 days after we chose
I
it.
just think
We
there has
did
to be
not
more.
choose Desi to not allow us to offer a remote option. And trust me, those that know me know what my daughter went through. And those that know me know I speak to Erin all the time. As parents on this board, and this is very important to everybody listening to understand, we are parents first. And we're here because we care deeply, not only for our children, but for you, for every parent in this district, for this administration, and every staff member that works in the district. And I'm escalated because I care as much as you do. I'm not yelling at anybody, but I want to make sure that's heard. Usually nobody has to question if they hear me because I kind of project. But we are coming at this. What Mike has been trying to say is that we are coming at this in our best direction. My question, when we get to that, is are there any districts that had a different legal opinion? Because we are genuinely interested in that. This is the line I'm walking on, explaining the questions we've been asking, and now as a board are trying to do in this meeting to put it on public record. But make no mistake,
we gotta get to the
everything
committee.
you're saying and thinking and feeling,
What's
we
that?
are hearing and we're asking already. Does that
No.
help at all to
would-
understand that we are really, truly,
It also-
passionately fighting for you?
And we also want to do the work, and we can't get there, because, like, you're asking a lot of questions, which I have no doubt, I
awesome.
understand why, but let us,
We've been going over things we already know, let's just.
but
Yeah.
let us.
we're
let us
trying,
do
we
our
just keep
thing.
getting questions, right? So,
We've talked about everything we already know, let's just.
but not
Yeah,
everybody
let
was
us-
here. We had the privilege
just-
2 weeks ago and knows what happened in the past 10 days since the state changed.
Okay,
So,
You can hear his frustration, you can hear our frustration, and even though our voices may be a little louder, because we're kind of trying to get that out there, we're really happy you're here. I know it doesn't sound like it, but the fact that you're here and you're saying what you're saying, it's being heard by more than just the people in this room, so that's really important.
I know.
So we are happy you're here.
So let me get to the
Okay?
committee. I know you just see what happens between the hours of 7 and probably 10 the past couple of Tuesdays, but there's a lot more stuff that goes into this with communications, and that's what we're doing. So let me just get to the committee. I promise I'll get to you. Just let me get to the committee, okay? Are you on the list? Okay, perfect. Let me get to the committee, and then we'll go through the list. Is that fair? Okay. Lance, questions, comments?
It sounds like we're getting this, my other would just be, we've seen the Hanover response. Where are other districts around us, and where are their responses?
You got it, and I can share what.
So, Everybody on the South Shore, so as a superintendent group, we do meet, South Shore superintendents, which includes, Pembroke, Marshfield, Hanover, Hingham, Duxbury, Cohasset, Situate. All of us meet together to make sure we're kind of, checking our thinking. Nobody, wants to be doing something that is, not in the best interest of kids. Everybody's in the same place, because I think everybody on the immediate South Shore, the Cape is obviously a much different demographic when it comes to local health data, but everybody on the South Shore shares similar data to what we have. So Hanover, Marshfield, Duxbury, all of those school committees that had an opportunity to meet prior to the board meeting from DESE on August 25th adopted the recommendation for masking.
Hingham did.
So all of us are kind of in that same place where we would like to be making data-driven decisions based off of our local health data. So our local health data, including our vaccination rates, our cases, our demographics, that was taken away from this committee. If you were at the meeting last time, or if you watched the meeting the last time, you heard us talk about metrics. So Lisa, as the health agent, and the Chief McCormick, the two members of the Pembroke Emergency Management Team, talked about what is the metric for the town, where the town would be looking at an indoor mask mandate. Because if we were, as a school district, to say, masks are optional, but the Pembroke Board of Health decided that masks were required in all public buildings, we would have to follow that mandate. So we did ask Lisa about what metrics they were looking at. If you watched the meeting or were present, you heard her say that they were looking at a rolling case count somewhere in the range of 50 per week, to be concerned and want to tighten down the practices. I presented some sample metrics to the committee last week that I would be thinking about if we were only recommending masks. At what point would we revisit that? What is the tipping point? Where would we be thinking, maybe we need to look at how to do this differently if there was evidence of school-based transmission or whatnot?
Well, and Aaron,
We're all in the same place. I think Hanover was the first one to draft a letter. Superintendents have a letter going also that is signed by every single one of us on the South Shore, asking for the control to be given back to us. Last year, we begged DESE to make the decision for us, and now we want it back.
We did.
We'll back you up, just take it.
What power does the letter have?
We'll back you up. Shut him down.
we appreciate the passion, but there is a forum and a time, and traditionally, I've been on other committees in other towns, and the open public forum is a chance to talk, right? I can't hear what I need to hear to make decisions if we don't get through this process. And can we get through this process is all I'm asking.
Can we just jump right to the letter to scare the hand of the drafted letter?
We gotta let the committee ask their questions. They have to understand.
Just a couple of people, right?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, so, and just to that end,
North
a
Central
decision
Links.
could be made tomorrow by the Board of Health that would supersede anything we do tonight.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
The way the pecking order goes from top to bottom, it's the federal government, which includes the Department of Education at the federal level. Then it goes to the state, then it goes to the Board of Health. As far as when you talk about what we're talking about, we're at the very bottom of it, unfortunately. So we're trying to get a little bit higher up, but we gotta get there. David?
Yeah, here's what I'd like to do in all honesty. And again, it sounds crazy. Thank you for coming. It is nice to hear. This is democracy at its best level. I want to hear the rest of the presentation, and I think some of the questions you have will be answered. The only thing I would say is please be respectful. When I hear someone say there's no leadership up here, there's none of this, I said, I've got 2 kids in the system. All right, like I said, I volunteer to do this. Like a lot of you guys, I probably work 60 to 70 hours a week. I'm here, I'm trying to do what's best. I also understand if you people want to take legal action as a group, perhaps maybe that's a situation you may want to look into. But we're doing the best we can with what we have. Let's see as we start to move forward. Let's hear the rest of the presentation, and then we'll take the questions and the answers. But I would ask if we can stop the snide remarks. I can hear people kind of mumbling under their breath. I get it, but I feel like I'm at like a high school game or something or other. We just kind of keep it professional, keep it light, keep it nice. Thank you very much.
Excuse
me, sir, why would you ask that?
Because if you want to facilitate movement in a meeting, you provide a certain amount of time for each person to talk.
So,
Yes, and I again, I'm entitled to speak, and I thank you, and again, I heard your story, thank you for your service and everything else, but my point was, I want to say to people, thank you for coming. I appreciate the difference of opinions, but we keep going down a rabbit hole, where we keep kind of answering questions. If we hear the whole presentation, it may...
But you're just holding it up now.
Well, no, you're holding it up, sir, respectfully, because I have to answer to you why I think I should be able to speak as part of this committee. It's, again, I was voted here, and if you want to vote me off, that's up to you people, that's fine, but I'm here. But thank you, I appreciate it.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Mike.
Susan?
And I think I'd mentioned mine, have any other districts pursued legal action and got a different legal opinion?
There is nobody in the group that, that I work with that has a different legal opinion at this time.
And did DESA give any indication, because we did hear about, alternative options other than applying to be homeschooled for the year, have they said there were any metrics that would change their decision on allowing remote learning at some point?
They said that they would relook at remote learning as an option after the first couple of weeks of school, depending upon how many students are needing to quarantine and are not. And there are districts that aren't participating in any type of testing, whether it's pool testing or test and stay. So they want some of that data before they make a final decision on remote. At this moment, remote education is not an option for any public student per DESE.
Okay, and Lisa has left, but I know in the recent weeks, we've only had 1 week where it went down a little, but we have steadily climbed. We are still under 4%, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, and from a pivoting perspective on remote learning, we are still capable if we need to. Not that I'm hoping we go that option. I'm hoping that this whole mask becomes optional again and we don't have to go to that because it's a lot on the kids too. But position-wise, I'm assuming, well, I think I can safely assume we've already had conversations about this.
Right, we've
in the
had
past, so,
conversations.
okay.
We have access to resources through the CARES funding and through some of the ARPA funds available to the district if we needed to infuse resources, whether that's staff or additional software and technology. So yes, we are able to pivot if that becomes an option for folks.
And the last question, but I know businesses are having similar discussions because of certain mandates from privately owned businesses, which is different than a government entity. But I'd be interested in case decisions that might parallel some of what we're battling, and if that could be incorporated into our argument. Probably not, but because it is
Happy
a
to look at it.
privately owned business and things move differently. But, I guess I'm as frustrated with this as a water ban because it rained all of July. I don't understand why that's happening either. But, just to try to lighten it a little bit, we're, it's odd. But that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Because you're talking about whether employers are mandating, correct?
Yes, because there have been some
So-
that have mandated and
Got it.
mandated vaccinations. That's different, but.
So let me just kind of, not that I'd rather focus our efforts on the other pieces because nobody here has asked, and tell me if I'm wrong, nobody here has asked us to consider, trying to look at all five, consider mandating vaccines for employees, correct?
No.
Nobody's asked that.
Correct.
Nobody's asked that question.
Correct.
So if it's not an issue, why go
I'm
in?
looking more parallel to the masking
Got it.
component.
But okay, so at this point, let me ask the question differently. At this point, it is not the will of this committee to have a discussion with regard to a mandate for employees.
Correct.
A mandate for mask?
Now, for
vaccinations,
vaccinations, correct?
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I
so
should
let's make
have
that-
posed, to make that
let's
very
make
clear,
that
this was
clear.
about the masking, because I'm
So-
trying to stay consistent with the issue
Before we
tonight.
go down
Yes,
that part,
I'm
could
sorry.
we focus on either finding out additional case law or finding out a second opinion or something else on the mask? Because that's the issue.
That's
Right,
the
so we have
component,
two
yeah.
opinions. We have Long and DiPietro, and we have Emerson and Emerson. I'm
Is-
happy to go out and solicit a third opinion if that is helpful to you. Again, in answer to Lance's question, I do not know of a school district that has received a contrary legal opinion to what is printed here. But I am happy to reach out and see if there's anything else out there.
Sue,
That's-
anything else you want to add, questions?
Nope, I'm done.
So you just mentioned two different lawyers. Who was the first one and who was the
So
second?
Long and DiPietro is the firm that the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, so again, not a state firm board, commissioned for a legal opinion. We, as a school district, have an attorney, Joe Emerson, of Emerson and Emerson out of Westwood. I also got a legal opinion from Joe on the mandate. So his opinion is in line with that of Mike Long, that the DESE does have the ability to enforce a mandate on a school district.
Okay, all right. So
I
that-
would not recommend going to Mass Association of School Committees because I think they are, my interpretation is there are members of the staff who are in favor of the mandate, so I would not go there because I don't think it would support anything we want. Just my opinion. Okay, let me just do something real quick, right? Did you ask a question? Sorry. So let me, just so everybody understands, well, we can vote on 2 items tonight. One, we talked about at the very beginning, to authorize the superintendent to fill out the waivers on behalf when we meet the thresholds. The second, and I'm going to read the Hanover letter, it has to change because of their testing protocol. They have the pool testing. So I'm going to read it and you can hear Hanover, not Pembroke. So the Hanover School Committee urges DESE and Governor Baker to restore COVID mitigation efforts, including mask requirements, to local control on or before October 1st. As grounds, therefore, we state that local governance is in the best position to assess individual community needs and consider unique community resources in the impact. Unique community resources that impact the risk of COVID transmission in our schools. Hanover, for instance, has a nationally recognized COVID testing program via our mobile integrated health unit. We have a robust contact tracing department, and we've invested considerable financial resources into air circulation in each school building. We also have strong collaborative relationships with our town departments, including the town emergency management and our Board of Health. We strongly believe that local governance, including our school committee, can determine the best approach to COVID mitigation in our community while meeting the needs of families and keeping the community safe. So that's what Hanover voted on. We would obviously need to remove the pieces on mobile integrated test health unit, the robust contact tracing, and replace that with our cleaning protocols. But we also have invested in air circulation pretty significantly. So that's what you will be voting on, that and the authorization for the waiver should we go from 78 to 80 and 53 to 80, the numbers that were said earlier. So based on that, I'll call you one at a time. If you go to the microphones, the folks at home can hear. Yep, it's over there. That way Aaron won't get any more emails. So go in order of who was here. Maureen, Jason, I know you were here last. Yeah. You got to go to the microphone.
Hi, Maureen J.C. Sorry, there's so much to discuss today. There's so much I want to say. I want to just focus, though, however, on what my options are as far as a mandate for masks. I understand after me that my choices are, if my child, I can go homeschooling, I have to apply for a form to do that.
Yeah, it's right on our website.
Okay, and I strongly, I would like if we could maybe get our attorney or make something, maybe a third attorney to defend us so that we can, I'm totally opposed to the mandate, and I would like the school committee to do everything possible to appeal to the state. Thank you. I'm sorry, I have so much I want to say about it.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. It's me. Lynn McGee. Sorry.
Hi, I just wanted to commend you on your initial decision to, make masks optional, because I feel it's very important for the parents to choose whether their child wears one or not. So most of my questions were answered, but I just had a couple more questions. The test to stay protocol, is that only for the unvaccinated students?
So if you're vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine or test.
And why is that?
That's how the state has set up the system, so.
So you have no ability to adjust that
We can
protocol?
offer it to those that are vaccinated if they would like to test, but they do not have to adhere to testing or quarantining protocols.
Is testing mandated in general, or do you have a say as to opt out of testing? My son goes to charter school, and they're not doing any kind of
So
testing.
yeah, we don't have any mandatory testing here. Testing isn't a condition of employment or enrollment here in Pembroke Public Schools. In districts where they're participating in pooled testing, which is more of a surveillance test where they're testing a large group of students weekly or bi-weekly to see if there's any COVID positives, that is consent as well that's necessary. The test and stay protocol, you must consent before we would test your student. So there's no required testing.
But so you have decided, though, that just the unvaccinated students should be the ones that are tested?
That is the way that is the way that the protocol is set up from DESE.
Right, but you decided to follow that.
We decided to adopt the protocol as it was given to us from DESE.
Why is that?
Excuse me?
Why is that?
I think that the CDC also, The guidance from the CDC, the guidance from the Department of Public Health, the guidance from DESE all states that vaccinated individuals, as long as they're asymptomatic, don't need to quarantine or test. So I think it's just in adherence with that same
Okay.
recommendation.
Can I just clarify, because I'm a little confused on, we're talking about close contact.
Close contacts, yes.
If you have symptoms, everybody would need a test.
If you have symptoms, you need to.
Yeah,
You
whether
can't
you're
stay in
vaccinated
school,
or not.
yes.
So we're talking about a close contact vaccinated person versus close contact unvaccinated everybody.
I guess so. I'm just trying to understand why you would adopt the policy of only unvaccinated students being tested at any period, whether they're close contact or not. Whatever your testing exposure, whatever the exposure is, why would you isolate only the unvaccinated students?
So, the thing, because we get two options, right? We can either say, don't do a test to stay, and the students have to stay out for the quarantine period. We're trying to figure out a way to get the students back in. The reason, let me just one other comment. The reason why we adopted it the way we did is we could go more strict, we can't go less strict. And the least strict requirement is to allow it for unvaccinated students.
So the charter schools that are also funded by the state can go with no testing
Right, so
requirements, but you have to?
No, test and stay is an optional program.
Okay, so we don't have to do it.
No,
So you're
we-
choosing to segregate.
So, no, the district has chosen to participate in test to stay. As parents, you do not have to participate.
We're
Okay,
just giving
as long
them-
as that's clear
We're
to the
just giving an
parents.
option for folks that don't want their student to quarantine at home for 10 days and miss instruction.
Okay,
You have
so-
the option to stay in school and test each day for 5 days and not miss in-person synchronous instruction.
Okay, but all of the testing is unnecessary because obviously we know that the test
And none of it is
doesn't
mandated
isolate
or
the virus.
required.
But you have the ability to say no testing and leave it up to the parents to you get their child tested if they want to, keep them home for as long as they're sick. We all know that the vaccinated also transmit the virus, possibly even greater so because they carry a higher viral load. So it makes no sense to me that you would only require testing for the
We're
unvaccinated.
not requiring it.
No,
we're
Well,
offering-
suggest it. Suggest it. In the way it's written, often it makes parents feel as though they have to do that. And it's usually not clear that you have the option to. So I would like if you do.
The only required test is if your student is sent home with symptoms of COVID-19, you must provide a negative test result to return to school. That is the same
Or
guideline that we had
quarantine.
in place last
Or
year.
quarantine.
Or quarantine for the period of times, which if they're symptomatic is 24 hours fever-free without fever-reducing medication and an improvement in all symptoms.
Okay.
Or a medical note that says that the symptoms were attributable to a different ailment.
Okay.
And
Even if
vaccinated
it's
or unvaccinated.
okay, even if it's the parent's choice, though, I mean, I still feel like it's setting a dangerous precedent to segregate and create a policy that in any way encourages the separation of students based on their medical status.
Interject one follow-up, just one
No,
question.
wait till you're.
Just a clarification, very important.
Wait till your spots. We're trying. Yeah.
Correct. Which is exactly what we just said. If you have been vaccinated, you are not held to the quarantining or any optional testing that we're offering. If you are unvaccinated, we're giving you an option to stay in school or to quarantine at home. That is your choice.
So,
As written by the CDC, the Department of Public Health, yes.
the intent of what we're trying to do is to get kids back in school.
But it's not necessary, and you know that.
Without the
Whether
test to stay protocol, all close contacts would need to stay home and quarantine.
According to the
The
state
CDC.
mandate or law.
Which is a conversation
Yeah.
for a different day. It's not something we can control.
So do you have anything else? Otherwise,
I
I'll-
do have one more question.
Yep.
So, say we all push through till October 1st and mask our kids. At that point, say hypothetically, the schools reach an 80% vaccination rate. At that point, is it your intention to then segregate the students, making the unvaccinated wear masks and the vaccinated not wear masks.
So that is not our intention. Again, obviously, the waiver process has not been sent out yet, as October 1st is the date. Our intention is to comply with the way it has been working. It's an honor system, right? If your signs, the CDC, the Department of Public Health is saying if you're unvaccinated, you should be masked in public or in the store. Nobody's asking you for your vaccine card.
Right.
We do not want
So-
to get into a position that we're collecting vaccination information from students or from staff. We also, with HIPAA violations and HIPAA rights, don't have the ability to share with classroom level teachers who in their room is vaccinated and unvaccinated. Nurses are the only ones privy to that level of information. It would be very difficult to require proof of vaccination as the onus for unmasking if we're not even able to share that information with staff. So an English teacher is not going to know if the 20 kids in front of her are vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Okay, but, most parents are not going to know that the policy is really like masks are optional, basically. You're saying like if your child is unvaccinated, then no one knows whether they are
So
or
on
aren't,
October
and-
1st, I would envision that the vote that you all took on August 17th would be kind of the way we would go about it, is that we recommend unvaccinated folks wear masks, but it's not required.
Yeah.
It's a parent and a family and a student choice at that time.
I still, though, it's gonna make it extremely uncomfortable and awkward for the kids, because the kids are gonna talk about the vaccine, just like they talked about politics and so forth. It's gonna create a divide. There's gonna be bullying. Oh, you didn't get the vaccine, you're contagious now, blah, blah, blah. Because every parent has a different view on this as well, and you're getting their education from a different place instead of actually following their intuition, which I would suggest, because any intuition would tell you that none of this makes sense. But I think that it's very dangerous to say now that that the unvaccinated are supposed to wear a mask, but the vaccinated are not, because kids are going to go home after maybe reporting back earlier in the year. Johnny didn't get his vaccine, and maybe he has a parent who's hardcore vax person, and decide that they're going to then find out that Johnny didn't wear a mask to school, and he wasn't vaccinated, and then he's going to come to school, she's going to come to school and create a stink about it. Like, what are you going to do in that case? And what is the kid going to do? Because now he's become a target and become isolated
Right,
and
and I think-
socially, and
I think every one of us can think of a hypothetical of how.
but that's going to happen.
Right, but until we see what the actual requirements are for the waiver and what we need to do in order to be eligible for that waiver, it's very difficult for me to say that this is what it's gonna look like or that's what it's gonna look like. Obviously, as soon as that information is available, I'll bring it to the committee, we'll have a similar
So the
level of
waiver is to
conversation.
apply for optional masks.
The waiver is in buildings where the vaccination rate of
Which-
students and staff is 80% or greater
Which would,
to unmask those that are vaccinated.
which, if you look at the two
No,
age groups.
unvax all of them. I mean, unmask
That's
all
the
of
way
them.
it's worded right now. Again, we haven't gotten the details of the waiver process.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you're submitting a waiver
No.
to
No, the
override.
DESE is creating a waiver for districts to apply for if they meet that 80% bar. We have not seen the waiver yet. We need to see what the words say.
Otherwise, it's masks. the whole
Otherwise,
year.
Correct.
right, but just to be clear, the way they've grouped the ages, it's 12 to 15 and 16 to 19, meaning because you have 15-year-olds at the high school, we need to get to the 80% of both in order to apply, and it's going to apply to the middle and high school, not the elementary, unless they change things again, right?
Like in terms of HIPAA law too, though,
Yeah.
you mentioned
We-
like the vaccination status is sort of a private piece of
School nurses are
information.
the only one privy to all
How do you
vaccination
know
status.
the statistics then?
You know this, the
So
gross
the
statistics.
state reports a municipal vaccination rate. So you can go on to they report every Thursday at 5 o'clock. It's a spreadsheet that
Okay,
lists.
well, it's got towns like Milton, I mean, half the kids go to private schools.
Right.
So
So
how
it's-
do you actually get, I mean, is your number
So there's-
accurate?
There's also a state database that the school nurses have authority to log into. So similar to what Lisa talked about as Maven, where they report cases, there's vaccination reports that our school nurses have access to see. They can see student names and addresses for vaccination.
Okay,
Okay, is that,
yeah, that's all I have
great,
questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Adam?
So I still want to thank you
Just
guys.
state your name, just so
Yeah,
everybody.
oh, sorry, Adam Tiro, yep. I still want to thank you guys. I know I've been more escalated tonight in my responses lately, and I just want you guys to know this is coming from a place of concern and passion. I know you guys are in a tough boat. I get it. I think the discrepancy is just, and we don't have to go back into it, but I think the discrepancy is we kind of just feel like we made an awesome, incredible democratic decision, and it was taken away from us, and that doesn't feel good. And we just feel like maybe there's more we can do, and you're telling us there's not. I get it, but that's just where the discrepancy is. I get it.
Define the "we," right? Because we as a committee can do
I get
a set, right?
I get what you're saying.
You as parents can do.
I know, but can you understand where that's a little messed up, where you guys represent us, and then you're telling, nope, now you have to go out on your own and do it.
Messed up at 7:30 in the morning on a Friday morning.
Listen, I live the life too, man. I get it.
No, I'm not complaining about the
understand.
time of getting told, hey, by the way, the decision you just made on Tuesday
Yeah.
is null and void.
I get it.
You
believe
can
me.
understand. You can.
I empathize.
A little bit more heated than you've been tonight.
Yes.
Was my response back to.
I
totally
get it. I totally get it, and I want to apologize too if I have escalated at all. I just it's coming from a place of concern, and it's hot in here tonight. And
We did that on purpose, Brett.
Yeah, thank you. And my daughter's coming in here tomorrow. Like, does the AC work in this building?
Yeah.
No,
So
it's a genuine
elementary
question.
schools don't have air conditioning. There are
okay.
a handful of rooftop units. The library here is air conditioned. There's a couple of spaces in the building that
Okay.
are air conditioned, but there's not. The high school is the only building that has universal air conditioning when it
All
works, right, Mark?
Okay. All right, so I just had a couple questions. I'll get through them very quickly as I can. So I know you guys said you spoke to some lawyers. Has Pembroke come up with a policy around refusal to mask wear?
Sure. So there is no policy on masking violations. Masking violations would be in accordance with our student handbooks as far as noncompliance. So sending your student to school unmasked when there is a mask mandate would be considered lack of school readiness and inability to attend. So our student handbook outlines what non-compliance-like infractions would look like in a school district and what the discipline would look like. As with all student discipline, it is a progressive discipline. For classroom level disruption, such as a dress code violation or, failure to report to a detention, it is up to and including suspension, but
Okay.
progressive discipline with the students.
So, I mean, we all know punitive discipline, we can't do that, right? So, I mean, that seems like the definition of punitive discipline, to remove a student who's otherwise attending, but choosing to not wear a mask. No disruption, just choosing to
Right,
not
and
wear a mask.
I know that you guys are tired of hearing me say the legal opinion that we've received, and I will post
Okay.
it. It does talk about, as an individual student's rights versus the common good.
Okay.
I think we can all go back and forth on what we
All right,
think the
yeah,
common good
that's
is
fine,
in this
yep.
situation, but there is,
Okay,
some
and so, so you said, if we were to theoretically uphold what we decided on the 17th, I know we said we can't, but I'm just talking about theoretically, has DESE threatened that they will take your budget?
So DESE has the ability to take legal action against it.
But have they told you that? Have you said, what are the consequences, and they said that in
Explain what you had
response?
to attest to.
So I have to sign an attestation as a superintendent that our district is following the mask mandate. So that is, if we are not following the mask mandate, I, as a superintendent, could lose my license. Again, I'm not worried about that. I can find a job somewhere else.
I get it.
But as a school district, then I am saying that we're not complying with the regulations associated with receiving school funding, which, I didn't type Jeff Riley an email and say, if we don't do this, are you gonna take our chapter 70? I
Right.
will. I'm happy to follow up with Jeff Riley. He's been extremely responsive to
Yeah.
superintendents. All of us are kind of in this
Yeah.
same
I think that's
rock and a
worth
hard
it.
place. I'm happy to do that, but I will tell you, in the past, when there have been mandates, funding is the first thing that they
Yeah.
put on the table.
Well,
as
I think that would be worth it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we all feel so strongly that it's not right what he's doing and what's been, and that puts it back on him. And if he's threatening to take away funding, you're talking about special education. You said 51%.
51% of our budget.
That's insane. If you
That's
would've-
actually just chapter 70.
And,
so you
and
haven't
if,
even
and
hit
if they
circuit
would have
breaker or
ever
anything
followed
else.
through with that, the legal ramifications from way more positions than this would come into play. They would never.
Right, but there have been times where they have withheld funding. So in the school
51%?
district, if you don't file your end-of-year pupil and financial report by October 31st, you don't
Right.
receive the second installment of your chapter
Right,
70.
and that's all
In
fair.
Milton, 2 years ago, when they didn't meet their time on learning requirements, they withheld funding.
Right.
So
And-
there are instances where they have kind of
Right.
gone.
I hear you. But I think, you know, when you come out and say 51%, that's a big thing right away. When it's a more step thing, I don't think they would ever go right to, we're
Right,
taking 51%.
chapter 70 is
I would hope not,
51% of our.
but put yourself in my spot.
Chapter
No, I
70 is
understand.
51% of our budget here, but in Duxbury, chapter 70 is more like 22%
Sure,
of their
I
budget,
understand
right?
that.
It depends on the local wealth
I
factor
understand
as
that.
well.
I understand that. I just think that might be something worth, like, putting in writing and, like, maybe forcing a response on his end, you know? And I think that would
I'm
be
happy
something.
to do that and report back
I
to the
have
committee.
no issue with that. I don't know, anybody else? No one?
And just real quick, sorry, I just want to make sure I know these things have been talked about, I don't want to make sure I don't ask again. Is there any consideration for a possible waiver situation where a parent could sign a waiver waiving all liability in regards to COVID, and vice versa, where someone who wants the mask could sign a waiver that they want a mask and they're not worried about any repercussions on that end? I think that's a really reasonable solution that is not being explored, and I would love to see more push for that.
Sure, I'm happy to get a legal opinion about that. We would need 100% return on that in order to.
I would sign
put
it right
in place.
now.
I know you would, but we would need 100% of parents to participate in that if that's something we were going to put in place. And we don't have
Let's see if we
100%
can.
participation rate on
Let's see-
anything, but I'm
let's see-
happy to get a legal
so-
opinion on if that would even be a
So let's do
possibility.
two things. Let's get the legal opinion, and then when you ask Commissioner Riley, kind of put together 3 or 4, ask him if the Commonwealth would consider it, right? Because they have, at a minimum, they have another decision point pre-October 1st.
Right. And then maybe also, I understand what you're saying about it'd have to be 100%, but maybe ask, what if it's not 100%? What if it's
no, I
80%?
will
Like, if
absolutely
80% of people are willing to do it, that seems pretty reasonable. You know what I mean? Like, that's all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you
No
guys.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, make sure I get the name. Is it Brendan, is it Bebo? Bebo? Bebo, did I get it right? Bebo, okay, sorry.
How are you? Again, my name is Brendan Bebo. I want to thank you guys for taking all of our time as well as mine. I have a couple of very specific concerns. Frankly, my daughter is an 8-year-old entering 3rd grade at Bryantville Elementary. She is deaf bilaterally and uses hearing aids that are put onto titanium abutments that are actually drilled into her cranium. In her IEP, for all of her life, ever since she started pre-K over at Chandler School in Duxbury, has been consistently put into every IEP. She needs access to moving mouths, visual cues from faces, as well as not only just to be able to decipher, also just not even to thrive, to keep pace with things, just enunciation, and really just feel part of the community. Unfortunately, when you have a deaf child or a sped child or somebody on IEP service, one of the biggest things that they face even more so than things that they can gain later on in life are the social issues that they face. So I just want to know how it's going to be. Same thing, if I'm not willing to get my child vaccinated, I don't care when the vaccine comes out, who it's approved for, what ages. So as of right now, I could move forward, easily get a medical exemption, make her the only one sitting in the class, and let her be, same thing, isolated. She could be the deaf, unvaccinated kid who doesn't have to wear a mask. Or when maybe we get back to 80% and other kids are taking them off, she's going to be the deaf kid who's unvaccinated. Just one more thing to make kids stand out. So on top of the fact that she's already going to be losing massive amounts of quality service, what is the plan going forward? Because Bryantville is known as a community for deaf students, more so than the other schools. A lot of other parents who have deaf students move their kids out of those, North Pembroke and Halifax, Hubbamock, yeah, to come
Not
over
in
to
Halifax.
Bryantville. Yeah, not Halifax. But,
Sure, so,
what is the
first off,
opinion
I
of
actually
that?
know your daughter. You guys were here at North for a little bit, right?
Yeah, we
she was-
left because of issues here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I can't speak specifically about your daughter, but we can talk about what service delivery looks like for students in similar situations as your daughter. I'm gonna let Jess just talk a little bit about some of the masks with
I just want to put out clear ahead of time, anybody who's using a Connect Clip mic system or anything like that, or any kind of microphone that's going into a FM system for a deaf student, clear masks don't work, so that's kind of a moot point just right now before we even get into that.
Yep.
It does not work for the microphone systems, it muffles too much. That's been proven by Chrissy Lamro, who works for Reed's, as well as the top audiologist for Boston Children's Hospital.
I can speak in general, again, about students' disabilities and accommodation. So we would work
directly with a family and consult people like Christy in regards to, you know, disability or, for instance, a hearing loss, to get her best recommendation in regards to what would work for the particular child as well as the teacher. So we accommodate for such things as wearing the microphone on or inside a mask. We have different face shields and things. We do have the ability to have plexiglass, etc. So we would work directly with a family, for instance, a child with a hearing loss, to assure that they can access accommodated, still following the mandates that are put forth.
Sorry, I've already been through all that, and none of the accommodations allow my child to follow and pursue what she needs to thrive in the community and in school that are in her IEP, which are actually legal mandates. That's legal. That's
So
not a mandate.
in
Once
an
it's in the
IEP,
IEP and from a medical professional,
we've
you
been-
have to allow that to be implemented.
So
and
we've
find a
been
way.
guided by DESE again, to not change an IEP based on the pandemic and some of the implications in regards to hybrid or et cetera. We've outlined in things like last year we did COVID learning plans. So, but if a child has an immediate need, we are going to meet that need, just like we would with a medical exemption for a mask. That wouldn't go into a 504 plan, for instance, which is an accommodation plan with the child with a disability that requires. That is a separate process, and that has been given to us guidelines again by DESE.
So what happens when a teacher exercises their right to be masked and any teacher at that grade level refuses to unmask?
So again, we'd work with an individual family on the needs based on the guidelines and recommendations of experts such as you mentioned, Christy. So
I'm just saying, we've already been through all this last year. My daughter was in school last year, and
I can't talk to specifics, but I'm happy to,
I'm looking for specifics.
Yeah, can we do this? School starts tomorrow. Is there a way to have a discussion with?
I've already had a discussion with
Okay.
Tracy and Jennifer.
For this school year?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, so they've met. I can't talk specifics publicly, but I can contact you again tomorrow. I've been on the communication,
let me
so
ask-
I'm the Director of Student Services.
So let me ask a question. We're both here tonight. School starts tomorrow. Is it possible for you to go over, if you went to a table over there, could you have the discussion?
If she has the time and she would like to, then
Would that be
would
okay? I'm not
fantastic.
trying, yeah. Would that be okay with you?
I'm here for as long as I need to get
Would that
any
be
answers
okay
of
with you?
things and
I'm not trying to
myself,
put you in
my
the middle,
student,
right?
other
But if you
students who
don't,
are, especially
I
the most at need.
Share, but yes.
SPED students,
We've been
IEP
through
students
this.
who are at the highest risk for
And
social
I think
impairment
you hit on-
and
Brendan,
developmental
I
impairment here.
appreciate you sharing, and I think, to me, you brought in a different angle that didn't even occur to me, right?
I think that's
Having
that was an
mask and
issue.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that, 'cause that again is another reason to fight for the things that are important to us, right? And so it's always been something we've talked about is the mental health of our students, and just the social aspect of what a mask means to someone like your daughter, right? And so that was a bulb for me, so I appreciate you sharing.
As well as the fact that she literally cannot understand what people are saying to her when they have a mask on.
No, absolutely. So I appreciate you sharing.
So my point is, what is the point of having her be in school? And, I mean, clearly, my other point with the homeschooling is it's a definite option I'm considering just because of the fact that I want her in school. We're talking about social aspect. That's one of the biggest risk factors. I want her in person in school. If I pull her out and then at some point I'm unable to provide that home service, or let's say somebody starts a homeschool pod, and let's say, God forbid, like the teacher got in a serious position medically or something like that where they were unable to provide, you're going to tell me that you're actually going to consider denying 15 kids coming back from pod with no feasible teacher re-entry into the school?
So, again, that's not what I said. When you are seeking approval for homeschool, you're seeking approval for the full school year. That doesn't mean if at some point during your homeschooling tenure, you are looking to rejoin the school, we will absolutely have a conversation with folks. It is not going to be a smooth transition for most students because of where they are in their home curriculum versus where we are in our school curriculum, and it may not be an immediate transition for most students, right? It will take time to get them up to speed, but it is a case-by-case basis. We often have families with students that get special education services that homeschool and rejoin us. It isn't unheard of for folks to rejoin us, but it is individual, case-by-case, student-by-student basis.
So the most recent example, let me jump in. The most recent example was last year where people picked remote learning. And remote, well, it wasn't for the year, it was for as long as it was available. The parents went from, when we went from hybrid to 4-day and then eventually 5-day, asked to come back into the setting. obviously, we brought those kids in, not all of them came in right away, because we had to make sure there was room in the class, we had to,
Right,
you saw the
and
protocols.
it should happen at a
It's-
natural transition time when you're talking about the secondary level, right? So there's many factors that go into when students rejoin us. But I want families to know, when you're asking for approval, you're outlining your plan to meet the 900 and the 990 educational instructional hours required. So you're asking for approval for the year. That is the approval you're being granted. You can absolutely come back to us in October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, and say, I don't want to do this anymore. But you need to understand that it isn't just, I show up at school the next day. There is a process by which we need to understand and establish where your student is at academically and where the right and
Of course,
fit
and I
time
have
is
no,
for them to
no
join.
mean to, I don't know if I gave that inclination.
No,
I
but
was saying,
we
Mike,
have
I'm
had
just gonna
families
call
that
you up
have
and
just-
by the way,
just-
my kid's gonna be in school tomorrow morning, be
We
ready.
have had families that on the day that we went back to in-person instruction just showed up because they were homeschooling, and now that school's 5 days, I want to go.
Right.
And so there's a process to it, but we will absolutely
And
work
I
with
just wanted to
any
be
family
be
that is
clear
looking
to
do that.
all of you, as well as anybody here, or anybody who's listening, that the direct message coming from the administration over, particular to Bryanttville, is not being conveyed that we will accept and review. It's being conveyed, your child is not coming back this year. And I can guarantee that, and I would have a discussion with the principal over Bryanttville.
Sure, and
Jennifer,
I've
about
had
that. 'Cause I mean,
discussions with the
I'm
folks
sure in the
there.
last couple of days you have, because it's arisen, and it's, I think a lot of people have actually physically seen what was written, and that's really directly what's being conveyed. And I just want to know if you agree with that position, or if you're going to.
No, I just want
Okay.
families to be aware, when you are petitioning to homeschool, you are requesting approval for an academic school year.
Okay, and I do want to be clear that we all have a right to homeschool our children. It's not.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's not
You
an
do need
actual, we're
approval.
not actually requesting them, we're just
No, you
requesting
need
that you
approval. Under the
approve
Charles
the
decision, you need
curriculum.
approval.
Right.
So you have a right to seek approval from the school district.
Okay, I just want all parents to know, I don't think that's legally right. I believe we all have a right, and that unless there's some ridiculous curriculum or no curriculum submitted, they don't really
Right,
have
you
a
have
right
to submit
deny
something.
us.
You have to
So we
submit
have never
something.
denied
Right.
anybody's.
This is what I'm
homeschool
saying, so it's a
request.
right. It's not a right to seek approval. It's really a right.
So you, absolutely.
have a right as well to get a phone instructor paid for by the town.
Absolutely.
So I would, if I were you, I would go,
So-
So you guys can
Brent-
connect.
Yeah, Brent,
route and
are you good?
if they're denied
I like to hear what she's saying.
apply to homeschooling, then the school can be able to.
Well, why don't you have that,
But if you, go through the school system and might talk to an attorney or at least an educational advocate, the school system is required to meet your daughter's needs. That includes even an individual personal home instruction. Just like
so
they have to
if you're,
kids who have
Brendan,
to
if you're set and you want to talk to her, you're more than welcome to. Just if you don't have questions for here, we want to move to the, we still have
Well,
some other
I
people
was
to go.
talking and allowing other people to interject, but that's fine.
No, understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
Speak to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Dan Hamilton?
Hi, Dan Hamilton. Thank you guys so much for all your dedication and time. Parents, I can't thank you guys and my brothers and sisters being up here. I want to talk a little bit about the implementation of the DESE mask requirements. I started reading it today. Masks are required. We kind of voted. We're kind of against it. It seemed like the school board, the parents were all against it. They're required to wear it, but it doesn't say that they have to wear it. It said they should cover, the nose and mouth, but it's not required. It's required. So just kind of going through that. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about was mask breaks, the duration and frequency of mask breaks. I don't see any mandate how often it needs to be or how long it has to be. DESE might have thrown us a real nice meatball over the plate right now because there's no frequency, there's no duration. We can basically open up a window in a classroom and the kids can be on a mask break until we decide, or the school board decides, or the teacher.
Right, so last year there was a requirement from DESE that students received at least 2 mask breaks of 10 minutes of duration or longer, exclusive of lunch and recess. So we did schedule mask breaks.
So the minimum, there's a minimum.
The minimum is 10 minutes. If we allow students to unmask in a classroom for longer than 10 minutes, and we get to the 15-minute mark, we've created close contacts within the classroom as far as contact tracing if there's a positive case. So there's no requirement of mask breaks from DESE. We, as a school district, obviously, it's hot in this room. I can't imagine wearing my mask for 8
Yeah.
or 9 hours in this room, have, worked with our building principals to schedule opportunities for students to be unmasked, in most cases outdoors. It is the comfort level of our staff as well, too. So we talk a lot at this table about what we think is right and what the committee wants to do, and some of these decisions have implications in collective bargaining as well. So we do, have to continue conversations with our staff when we're talking about some of these things, but though there is no requirement for mask breaks in the DESE mandate, we have obviously, from last year learned that students do need breaks in addition to lunch and recess. I understand what you're saying as far as just open the window and let them stay unmasked all day and say the whole day is a mask break.
No, I wasn't saying that, but maybe we can be creative and take into account what the parents want, what we want, what you guys want and stuff.
Right, and we as a school district report to the Board of Health here in Pembroke. So,
Yep.
Lisa comes in and does inspections of what our learning spaces
So
look
close
like.
contact, they have to be within 3 feet or 6 feet?
So if they're masked, as long as they're 3 feet apart. If they're unmasked, they need to be 6 feet apart.
Okay, so there's a possibility that we could have them 6 feet apart in the classroom
We don't
with
have
the
the
window
ability to get
open.
all of our kids in at 6 feet of space, which is the conversations that we had.
If we opened up the auditorium
We
or
did all
or
of
the
that
gym.
last year,
yeah,
and we still
okay.
weren't able to do it.
Okay.
We tried, which is why we couldn't get most kids back to school until February.
Who decides where and when, like, a mask break is required or needed?
So it's the discretion of the educator. At the secondary level, it's a little bit more scheduled than at the elementary level because those students are with the teacher all day long. Mark is our high school principal. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the structure looks like at the high school, but.
Sure, I'd love to. So at the high school right now, currently our students are scheduled for 3 mask breaks during the course of the day. They'll do it during the second block, which is between 8:24 and 9:30. Half the building will go at 8:24 till 8:34, let's say, and the other half will go at the end of the period because we don't want everyone outside at once. So we go 400 kids at one time, 400 kids the other time. So second block, lunch is a natural mask break because their masks are off and eating lunch. And then there'll be one after our 5th block. So it's staggered throughout the day pretty evenly to spread them out for the kids.
Can the kids decide when they want, like, a mask break? If my son needs a mask break, can he determine that for himself?
No, but we do have students that need more frequent mask breaks, and we've worked with those families through a 504 and our accommodation plan to allow them for additional breaks on top of what's scheduled.
We talk about, like, recess being a mask break. Obviously, in the area, we have rain, inclement weather. The kids are not outside all the time or anything. What's going to be done for, like, that 25 minutes of recess? Are they going to be allowed to take that mask break that's kind of counted into their day?
Right, so last year our
Because it didn't happen last year.
Last year, our students did go outside even when the weather was borderline, as far as light rain or even, what in previous years would be considered too cold to be outside. If recess is indoors, it does generally happen within the classroom. But the building principals are, obviously working with the teachers around what alternatives are for students. Every other student could unmask in the classroom. And then the students would be 6 feet apart while masked. So there's a couple of different scenarios. There's use of larger spaces during indoor recess, like the LGI here at North, where students could be 6 feet apart and unmasked.
What if we staggered, like, mask breaks so, like, every other student was able to take off a mask? Then we could have the social distancing, and then we could allow them to take off the mask.
Right, and there's obviously staff that aren't comfortable with students removing masks in their room. Again,
Wouldn't it be nice if you guys came up with like a rule, something like that? That way they would take a lot of discretion, because each educator might have a different thought towards what kind of break they might need.
Sure,
Would
I
you
mean,
guys like to see that? Like coming right from them? That way, every 45 minutes or something like that, they need a mask man break for 15.
we can increase it, and what we've set for our educators is a minimum mask break. There are teachers that go out more frequently than what's in the high school schedule. There are teachers at the elementary level that conduct the bulk of their day outside so that students can be unmasked. I don't think us scheduling mask breaks for, at the high school, 812 kids every 45 minutes is logistically possible, especially if they're not going to happen within the classrooms. So,
You say you're not for the mask mandate, but it sounds like you are.
So the recommendation that I made to this board on 8/17 was for a recommendation of masking
Yeah.
and not a requirement. So I stand by that recommendation that I made to the committee.
But I think we can be creative, you know, like, we already voted, we're against it, you know, we have to follow within the guidelines and the mandate. But they're not mandating that we cover both holes, they're not mandating how long, the duration, or the frequency of mass. So we do have some, you
Right,
know,
I'm happy
work
to
with
sit,
us,
I'm happy
you
to
know,
sit
work
down
with
with
the
our health
parents.
agent, Lisa, tomorrow and see if she wants
Yeah,
to help
that'd
us
be
think
awesome.
creatively about it. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Pembroke.
Hi, Camperoni.
Sorry.
First, I want to say thank you, and I apologize for my escalation as well, but like Susie, it comes from my heart and my strong beliefs. I also want to just echo Adam's comments and suggestions. And I was just wondering, is there a way that the superintendents maybe could get together, as the surrounding superintendents get together and kind of go after Desi rather than just our board?
Right, so like I said, when Mike read the Hanover letter, the superintendents from the South Shore have sent a similar letter to
Oh,
Governor
okay, so
Baker
it's
and the
all,
commissioner,
okay,
yes.
thank you, sorry, didn't hear that. Another question, chorus, it's very important to me, especially at the high school level. How is that gonna work?
So there are guidelines put out by the Massachusetts Association of Music Educators, MEMA, I don't know what the acronym is. So DESE has put within the mask mandate the opportunity for students to unmask for specialty elective courses like chorus and band involving wind instruments, with added precautions of distancing, bell covers, mask with slits. So there are protocols in place for things like chorus to happen, as well as band in similar fashion as it happened last year with all of the mandates.
Okay.
I know that at the secondary level, our chorus teachers prefer to be outside as much as possible.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
Yep.
when you spread out a choral group like that with the 12 feet of spacing, you don't get necessarily the sound that you're looking for. So I think outside is obviously their first go-to, but there are parameters put in place for that activity to happen indoors as well.
Okay. And should a child decide they're wearing the mask, they're complying, but it's kind of falling below their nose, you know, how are the teachers gonna handle that? Are they all gonna handle it the same way, or, I mean?
Yeah, so obviously, I want to say first, students were so amazing last year. And I think when we talked about this on the onset, we all thought for, you know, the first kind of 18 iterations of what the plan was, that our youngest learners are going to have the hardest time figuring this out. Some of our students in our severely special education classrooms are going to have the hardest time complying to this. And in all honesty, that isn't what it looked like. I know at the high school there was probably several reminders of up over your nose, but I don't think anybody approached the situation as students intentionally wearing the mask inappropriately. So I believe all of our educators handled it in a manner of, you know, a verbal reminder of it. I don't think we had anything that raised the level of, you know, school administrative discipline for not wearing proper masks.
Not a
So.
single issue last year with that.
Okay.
Not one.
Okay. Are students going to be, like, when they're the first day of school, second day of school, are they gonna get something that they have to sign that the parents aren't gonna see? Are there anything like that?
Nope, so the only thing that you all sign as a student and a parent is the high school handbook or
Yeah.
the elementary or middle school
Right.
handbook. There's no addendum to the handbook last year. Last year, we had an addendum that talked about remote learning, mask wearing, and all of that. There is no addendum to the handbook this year.
Okay.
So as part of the registration portal, the acceptable use policy is something that students sign as well. I'm just saying that you'll use our internet and within the parameters of what we have spelled out as expectations.
Right, I just wanted to say that anything the students sign, parents have already signed as part of the registration process. So you have all signed the handbook and the acceptable use policy.
Whether you want your student photographed, all of that stuff is
But
part
we
of the
have them
registration.
also sign a form that says that they too have the handbook and they're aware they're supposed to follow it. But it's nothing new, you have the same thing there, so.
Okay.
But that's done in school.
Okay.
And the handbook is posted to the school website. There's no.
Okay, and have you or any of the other school boards that you know of gone after DESE stating that this is a violation against FAPE, you know, because it is kind of putting the kids in a mental, you know,
So on our
uncomfortable
call today
position?
with the Department of Education and Commissioner Riley, there was obviously conversation about FAPE and what this means for that. It is not the position of the department that removing a student from a school setting for refusal to wear a mask is a denial of FAPE. So again, I'm sure that, folks can organize as a parent group and get a different legal opinion. It is the opinion of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that they are within their right to implore school districts to use their school code of conduct when looking at masking violations, so.
Okay. And again, thank you, and I do want to just reiterate that I really am strongly on you going ahead with the third opinion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole Hurst. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to hold you up. Jeffrey Hurst?
How's it going? My name is Jeffrey Hurst. Thank you all for hearing us tonight. I only have a couple of questions. First, if our kid is considered a close contact, they're under the age they can't be vaccinated, and they choose not to get a test, so they'll be mandatory quarantine for 10 days. What learning additives will you be able to provide for these kids to be home for 10 days?
Sure, what we talked about at the meeting on the 17th is that it would be treated as a traditional absence or a sick absence if you're choosing not to test and stay. So students will be provided work from their classroom teacher and a daily check-in with school staff.
Okay, but there won't be any, obviously.
There's no synchronous opportunity.
No?
There's
Okay.
no, I mean, I'm not saying that won't happen anywhere. There's possibilities where teachers will invite, the one student at home to Google Meet into the classroom, but that is not the requirement that we have for teachers at this time. It's not as easy as just making it one. We had this conversation last year as well. Synchronous and asynchronous learning for staff is a mandatory subject of bargaining as part of a collective bargaining agreement.
So let me can I ask you a question a little bit different?
Yes.
A student isn't going to be punished because they have to.
No, absolutely not.
quarantine.
Students
They're
have
going to
the-
be given ample opportunity to make up the work or
Absolutely.
help or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Right, but it'll be left on the parent to do it solely for 10 days.
So there will be work provided by the classroom teacher with a daily check-in with school staff where they can assist, more
Right.
often
I'm
than
just
not.
saying, like for an 8-year-old going to 3rd grade, it's extremely hands-on.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm
Right.
just,
Right, the other piece of it is that that teachers would identify the essential assignments, right? So I don't necessarily need you to complete every one of the math worksheets that happened in that 3rd grade math block during that day, but there are 2 that are really important to the content. So teachers will obviously identify what are the essential assignments that they would like students to complete. And if you are familiar with our handbook, you know that Mark very, very much so is, you have the same amount of time as you were out in order to make up the work. So if you were out for 10 days, or you have 10 days to complete the assignments, so.
1 day per day, and again, I know your kids aren't at the high school, but by and large, our teachers go well beyond that as well, particularly in this day and age. If your kid's out for 10 days, it almost never happens. We say, okay, it's day 10, when it's closed. We allow kids to continue to make up work throughout the entire term. We're very flexible with that.
Okay. My next question, it's about the waiver for the end of the month. So if we are allowed the waiver, obviously, it's only going to be for vaccinated kids that are of age. So anybody under the age of 12 that's going to be in the elementary program, they will be forced to still wear masks.
Right, which is why the committee is asking for honor before October 1st for the decision to be given back to local communities.
Right, so this is my second part to that question. So now if you are allowed to do that, where the committee is allowed to say, yes, well, masks are optional, parent choice, the whole 9, the Board of Health can trump that, correct?
So the Board of Health can trump everything. They can put an indoor mask mandate in for the town of Pembroke, which would include all public buildings, which schools are.
Which is what they're voting on this week, I believe, correct?
tomorrow at 1.
Right.
So, but the way we voted on the 17th, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, if DESE changed the guideline mid-September, right? The stars aligned and they decided, we would immediately go to what the DESE mandate is. So if they pulled it back September 12th, I don't even know what day of the week it is, they had an epiphany and they said, masks are now optional, we would immediately go. The way we worded our motion, our vote 2 weeks ago, gets us to whatever their guideline is. So we're at the minimum, we're not more restrictive.
Right, but either way, if the Board of Health on tomorrow says indoor mask mandate
Yeah.
for the next 30 days, whether that happens or not, we don't have a choice.
Correct.
And there's no way for us to overrule that?
It would be, the only Board of Health is Zoom.
I mean,
So-
it's 3 guys on the Board of Health, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you guys have a panel of what, 6?
There are 5.
5?
She doesn't get to vote.
So,
We could try to outvote them if we could, right? 5 to 3.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
so
I
the,
mean,
so the school committee doesn't have the right to put in place a less restrictive requirement than that was
But
voted
there's no
on.
formal way to appeal it?
So, you know, I know some of you are joining us for the first time because you're passionate about this, and others of you have been joining us for this entire 18, 19-month saga and some before that. I think what's important to point out to folks is that we have an extremely collaborative relationship with the health agent. And so as I, the superintendent, make a recommendation to this Board of 5, our health agent makes a recommendation to the Board of Health, similar fashion. You heard Lisa talk tonight about kind of what they're seeing for cases. She is not advocating for an indoor mask mandate at this time. She talked about the metric of a rolling average of 50 cases for her and the director of our Pembroke Emergency Management to be looking to do something different. So though it is not impossible for a board like the school committee to do something in opposition of what I was recommending, or the Board of Health to do something in opposition of what their health agent is recommending, I think it's important just to point out that I share data with this committee and Lisa shares data with her committee. And so if you're making data-informed decisions, which is what we all talk about doing, you would most often be taking the recommendation given to you by the person that you have given the job to do that. So,
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, it's Donald, is the last name Keenan? It's kind of. Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. It was,
No worries.
the way it was.
Hey, thank you very much. I apologize for my
No worries.
perceived aggression earlier.
It's okay.
Listen, I talk directly. It has not served me in my life to not talk directly. So,
It's all good.
all right. So I am very concerned at the path we're going down. And if you guys are feeling it inside, we should do the right thing. And the right thing is not to comply with things that don't make sense for our kids. The unintended consequences of masking and putting fear into their hearts is going to last throughout their entire lifetimes. You guys have probably already done a great job mitigating the trauma that they already went through for the last 18 months, right? Doing the best that you can with what you had. Guys, I think the data is not supporting what we were told. So I ask you guys to show some leadership and don't comply with things that violate people's rights. I ask of this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Last up, we have Nicole Daniels. Nicole?
Hello. A lot of my questions have been answered as well, so first question, for all of the COVID testing for the test to return, how are the costs for the tests being funded?
So it's test to stay, and it is all free to us from the state, as is all diagnostic and surveillance testing. So whether you're going to participate in pool testing or symptomatic testing in your school district, it's all supplied free of charge.
Free of charge
Free of
meaning-
charge to the
State.
district. Obviously, somebody pays for it. There's
Taxes,
nothing
right,
free.
okay.
The Commonwealth is
The
funding it.
school, it's not coming from the school budget?
No.
Okay. And just returning back to the vaccinated versus unvaccinated in terms of quarantining. So I'm just a little bit confused with the current data showing that both vaccinated and unvaccinated folks are getting COVID. Our cases in Pembroke show that 4 of our 18, I think, whatever the numbers were, are people who are vaccinated. So why would we then enforce with kids to say, okay, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to get tested, you don't have to quarantine, but we know that they can also get and transmit COVID. Why would it be different for vaccinated versus unvaccinated?
So, I'm just trying to think about how to say this politically correctly. I'm not sure any of us up here understand the science, right? Because the science doesn't make sense. They're saying this, then they're saying this, and the overlap is here, it's a gray area here. The CDC and the Department of Public Health is saying whom asymptomatic close contacts, whether vaccinated or unvaccinated, and what the protocols are. We, as a district or as a community, I guess, with the backing of our health agent, could implore a quarantine protocol stricter than what the state is saying, and we could say that all individuals, vaccinated or unvaccinated, could need to quarantine or test to stay. That isn't something that the committee has asked us to look at this point, but that is within their purview. We could have, as we've said in several instances tonight, we could have a protocol that is stricter than what the state and federal guidance is, but we just can't have one that is less strict. So I think, when presented with the option of the test to stay protocol, the board was looking at this as an option for families, for students not to miss instructional time, and that was the overarching goal. So I don't think necessarily you were validating it on the vaccinated versus unvaccinated, but what can we offer to families so fewer students miss fewer days of school? But I'm happy to.
I
If the
understand
committee
that.
is interested in us looking at a stricter wording for it, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I think my concern is more the downstream effect on the kids who are unvaccinated and going into that kind of bifurcation of the student body to say, okay, these are the kids who are vaccinated. You don't have to quarantine. But you unvaccinated kids, you've got to go. Like, you're out 10 days unless you want to get tested every single day and deal with that. You got to go. And then there's no asynchronous learning for those kids. And if you had a kid in the high school last year, your kid got booted lots. My kid did, and never tested positive, but still was missing instruction. I have one kid who was at home and did great academically, and I have one kid who was in school who never does great academically, and being at home for 10-day stretches didn't make it better. So there is a downstream segregation that's going to happen because of that vaccinated status versus the unvaccinated status. And whether it's them wearing a mask or them constantly being at home for 10 days, it's all going to come back to the same thing of, we know, my kid already got told that they're not going to have the prom because of him, because he's unvaccinated. And they're not even in school yet. So this is already, the bullying's already starting, and I know I sent emails to everybody and their uncle up here, and I appreciate my response from Mr. Talbot and no one else, but I'm sure he spoke for you all. There are downstream effects of this, and so having that, all of these policies and choices, I don't want it to be more strict, obviously, I know nobody does, but with that plan, you then say, you're vaccinated, you're unvaccinated, you've been gone for 10 days 3 times. You're the reason why the prom's not happening. You're the reason why our team isn't winning. Why don't you just get your vaccination? Well, why don't I tell you about my religious belief or my medical condition? And there's serious downstream issues with these kids psychologically, but also these are things that aren't supposed to be discussed with the administration or with their peers. And having that test to return only for the vaccinated or only for the unvaccinated is going to put that scarlet letter on them once again, whether it's masks or them being out for 10-day stretches nonstop. And that's a big concern for me. It's already starting. So that's, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate.
Can I just build on that? I'm assuming the testing is done in privacy, right?
Absolutely. So it's done within the nurse's office before the start of the school day.
So that shouldn't become a public issue, but I
Also,
understand.
also those.
Well,
That's downstream. We're talking the first 30 days.
So we understand.
That's a different story.
But I also don't necessarily want my kid to have that test every single day for 10 days. Like, there are chemicals in the test that there are concerns about as well. And having it once a year is maybe one, I mean, again, your personal choice, right? So my kid's gonna be at home for 10 days, over and over, and that's my choice, but there's no good learning options for them, and teaching yourself the content in an AP Chem class or an honors physics class is not actually easy.
Right.
And the teachers, some are really accommodating, but as you know, some bio teachers aren't so accommodating, so it really does depend.
Right, and I think with the way that the protocols are set out, there will be very few instances of close contacts identified because of the masking and the 3 feet of spacing. So, though we have the tests for test and stay, I don't anticipate utilizing it very often. There's almost no instances under which students or staff in a classroom would be close contacts with 3 feet of spacing in both individuals being masked indoors.
The problem is that we're going by the data, and when an
Right, so,
We-
you know, anytime you receive a positive test from a, let's just say you're participating in the test to stay protocol, and you receive a positive rapid antigen test from our school health professional, we would absolutely tell you as a family, and anytime you get a positive test result from any setting, you should follow up with your pediatrician, and you should get a second test. So,
It's not consistent, like, the test, the problem is that the tests aren't consistent and they're not accurate, they're not
Yeah.
accurate. So the data's gonna show what the governor, the DESI wants it to show, do you know what I mean?
So-
In order to, and it's basically what it comes down to is we're all angry over the fact that our freedoms are being taken away. And that's why, I mean, again, I appreciate that's why we're all so amped up. We just wanna put our foot down and fight it, you know what I mean? So it's frustrating, I know, on both ends, but.
I think you know we get it. Add the fact, and I'm not, by no means am I looking for sympathy or anything else, we're just trying to state a fact. Put it on, they're making decisions, right? And they're not looking at their ramifications. You raised 3 great points, you raised multiple great points, but 3 of them specifically, they don't think about in Malden when they make a decision that impacts a local school district. That's why we're asking for local control. They're not looking at the bullying. They're not looking at the social and emotional issues, which are real. I can't tell you how many times between several of these ladies, we've had discussions about individual children that parents have reached out about. They're not seeing that. That's why we're asking for local control, and why, speak for myself, and I actually think I speak for my colleagues, we're pretty upset when it got taken away from us for a reason I can't explain, right? Because when we talk about the data, we were told to trust the data. We get trust the data, and then it changes. So that just adds to the frustration. So we hear your frustration. Believe me, we understand your frustration. Let me stop that way so I don't look like I'm.
He's more composed than I was, because I'm sorry I raised my voice.
But when you, in what we're trying to explain is take your concern, go 5-6-fold of some of the other issues that we're having to deal with, right? You know, the issue, I mean, to point to you, Brendan's issue with his daughter, those are the things we're talking about in addition. The issue with the tests, we talked about that at the last meeting because we were told for several months by Lisa, who I trust, and you know, we've worked with her closely, the PCR test has false positives, right? I could give you the stats, and now we're being told to trust it. So it just, that's why we're struggling, and that's why I may not show the frustration the same way, but I'm very frustrated on we got.
This is what doesn't
So-
make sense to me, that we're putting energy into this based on.
Thank you.
You are. I know.
It's a constantly shifting landscape. They move the goal line, they move the goalposts. It's now 3rd down, no, now it's 4th, 35. It's constantly gonna change. Guys, we can stop this.
They want you to nail the ball so you vaccinate your kid. That's the bottom line. They want to make, it's a pain in your butt, so
Yeah,
you
so-
vaccinate your kid.
So-
That's the reason.
Appreciate all the conversation. Let us get to, let us get to the 2 decisions we can make tonight. So the 2 that,
Can I just say one thing? It's gonna be a really quick question,
you were quick the last time, be quick.
I was, wasn't I? So Brett
Just
said-
state your name, I know it's a long name.
Brett says once, and so I just want to see something that says here, we did a test, okay, and masks work. They don't work, guys, especially for little kids. They don't work. You guys know, you've seen it in action. They're open. You know, you can wear a shirt over your face. You can wear just a cloth, an N95 mask. None of them work. They don't work, guys. We do have to come together and we gotta fight with you guys, with other towns and other superintendents. You know, we have to come together. We all know it doesn't work. You know? That's why these people are clapping and they feel like we do. They don't work. You know? Seriously. I mean, what do we do? You know, we can't mask our kids for the rest of their freaking lives over, sorry, it's the flu. It is. It's all gonna come out, you know? What happened to the flu last year? Let me tell you, okay? Let me just tell you real quick. Sorry, this will be quick. 500,000 deaths. First of all, every year people die of the flu, between 32 and 38,000 people, okay? There were 500,000 COVID deaths last year. Everything was called a COVID death. You died in a car accident, you tested positive for COVID, you died of COVID. You died of a heart attack, you tested for COVID, you died of COVID. You didn't die of a heart attack. Everything went down last year except for COVID deaths through the frickin' roof. My point is, 500,000 deaths is what they said. CDC then came out and said only 6% of those deaths were actual COVID deaths. You know what 6% of 500,000 is? 30,000, okay? There were actually death rate went down last year, you know? Jesus Christ.
So we've got a couple things. So we've got a couple things. So we can go to, it's entirely up to the committee. We can talk about Hanover first, or we can do the superintendent waiver piece. But actually, let's do the Hanover discussion. So let me read it again, because it's been a while. So, and I'll try to plug it based upon what we would take for a motion. So the Pembroke School Committee urges DESE and Governor Baker to restore school COVID mitigation efforts, including mask requirements, to local control on or before October 1st. As grounds, therefore, we state that local governance is the best position to assess individual community needs and consider unique community resources that impact the risk of COVID transmission in our schools. Pembroke, for instance, has invested considerable financial resources into improving air circulation and in cleaning protocols in each school building. We also have a strong collaborative relation with our town departments, including the town emergency management team and our Board of Health. We strongly believe that the local governance including our school committee can determine the best approach to COVID mitigation in our community while meeting the needs of families and keeping our community safe. So is there a motion to authorize the superintendent to draft a letter on our behalf, signed by us, copying Representative Cutler, Senator Moran,
Commissioner Riley?
Commissioner Riley, thank you. Anybody else?
Am I allowed to make a
It
suggestion?
would go to, hold on one second. I gotta get the motion. It would go to the governor.
Okay.
So this would go to Governor Baker.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so motion by Lance, second by Susie. Did you, quick,
I wanted to suggest an amendment rather than the date of October 1st, if the verbiage could be entered, which spoke more to as soon as possible.
it says on or
Immediate.
before. It says on or before.
Or before. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so is everybody good? Any discussion on that?
The only comment I'd like to make
Yeah.
is we had the ability to contact Trace.
Correct. So
They're saying they've got
they're doing
Right,
contact
so we have the same
tracing.
public health nurse as the town of Hanover. We share her with the town of Hanover. In Hanover, their protocols are a little bit different. They use a mobile health unit to come out to your house to test if you're having symptoms.
Okay.
They utilize their EMTs for drive-through COVID testing all hours of the day, free of charge to residents. Not a protocol that's in place here in Pembroke.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, if there are none, on a motion by Lance, second by Susie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, that's unanimous. Great. Okay, so now, is there a motion to authorize the superintendent to file a waiver on behalf of the Pembroke Public Schools when we reach the state threshold and the state actually issues guidance or guidelines?
So moved.
Motion by Susie, second by Sue. Further discussion?
Do we have a timeline on when that might be released?
They said before September 10th, I believe, is 2 Fridays, 2 weeks from Friday.
Do we need to move now prior to getting that information?
I don't know what your meeting schedule is. I don't know if you're meeting on the 7th or the 14th.
Which the 7th is next Tuesday. I cannot. Oh,
That's the Jewish holiday, so I don't think we're gonna be on the 7th.
It's Rosh Hashanah.
so the
What
question
date are
is,
we looking
I get your point. I'm just trying to, in case something happens.
Is there a need, right?
I mean, they're gonna give us the guidance on the 10th. You guys are meeting on the 14th. I don't know that there's, much work that will happen on a waiver filed on Monday the 13th as opposed to Tuesday the 14th.
Just trying to
So,
be
yeah.
proactive on it. Just, I mean, I get your point. We can always reconsider it. I'm just trying to
Yeah, because I think we talked a little bit about verbiage and.
Wanted to see what.
Wanted to see it?
Yep.
So we're okay to table that until,
September 14th?
Yeah, so
September
that,
14th?
that's true, just in case there's narrative in it that might be, related to rug pulling again, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it.
That's fine.
More restrictive than less, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good, I think that's a good suggestion.
okay, so, then that's all we have on the superintendent. We have to do so,
Right, so let me just talk a little bit about
Yeah.
C. I had put in your packet, an updated policy EBCFA face coverings. You actually don't need the policy, as your vote on August 17th was to
Covered that.
yeah.
adhere to the guidance and requirements set forth by DESE and DPH, so you do not have to have a separate masking policy. I just put that in there in case there were folks that wanted to have that conversation. I put in your packet the tech scorecard. I'm sure everybody in the audience is super excited about that. So the tech scorecard just outlines, what we've been able to accomplish over the past school year, some of the work that's happened this summer. I can tell you our teachers are most excited about the projector project that has happened or has started and will continue over the first few weeks of school, where all of the projectors that are on carts are now wall-mounted, eliminating the tripping hazard in all of our elementary and middle school classrooms. In addition, all of the wireless access points in our school district have been upgraded over the past 12 to 14 months. I think they are just finishing up either today or early tomorrow morning at the middle school, and then every single wireless access point would be upgraded. We have had, obviously, concerns in the past around wireless coverage within the buildings. This improves that functionality. It also talks a little bit about the goals of the department. This is a scorecard that you get quarterly, so this is just kind of the update from last school year. We got away from it a little bit last year, as your meetings tend to center around COVID-19 and nothing else until we got to budget. So, this is just kind of an at a glance what's happening, and you'll get it every 3 months.
Fantastic. Any questions or comments on that? Okay.
The last thing is
Yep.
my report, I'm giving. The last thing in my report
done.
is the consideration
You're
for
right.
second read and approval of the ESSER 3 stakeholder
Yep.
survey. So as we shared last time as a first read, as part of the stipulations for the ESSER 3 money, we do need to solicit stakeholder feedback on what we use that money for. So it's a pretty straightforward 4-question survey that goes out to the community, which includes parents, students, and community members at large around what they think the issues we should tackle with those additional funds are. It's pretty dry, but I didn't get any edits from you all since last time, so if there's anything you'd like me to change, let me know.
So is there a motion to approve is there a motion to approve for second read and approval of the ESSER 3 survey?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by David, second by Susie. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so at this point, we're planning on the 14th. There's a chance I might not make the 14th. I'll let you know within the next couple of days. I may be traveling for work.
Sure. We've also been invited on the 14th at 6 to go to the community preservation meeting to talk about those 2 warrant
Got it.
articles that we've submitted, so.
Okay.
Okay. That's it.
CPC meeting? Okay.
And you don't need personal service contracts.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay. So, okay, with that, is there a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21AC, to discuss a strategy for collective bargaining collective bargaining as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the legal position of the school committee as declared by the chair?
So moved.
Motion by Susie, second by Sue. Okay, by roll call, Sue? Susie?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Lance? Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we're gonna change locations